This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
3 minutes after 10 is the time. It's strangely liberating, isn't it? The recognition or the reminder that everything's gone bonkers. Everything's gone completely bonkers. You sort of you feel. You feel yourself sliding back into denial and into sort of thinking, oh, maybe things aren't that bad, or maybe things aren't so upside down, or maybe the damage wreaked upon this country by 14 years of Tories and Brexit and Liz Truss and Boris Johnson, or you forget just how depraved and disgusting he was while many members of my profession were fighting over who got to tickle his toes with the most enthusiasm. You just sort of look at it, and now, of course, the next chapter of that, which is the people most responsible for it, claiming that it's all Keir Starmer's fault, and Nigel Farage sort of leading the line of people most responsible for bringing this country to its knees and pretending that it has nothing to do with them. And every now and then things happen that just remind you of reality, and you can hold on to that reality for a while until it starts slipping out of your grasp once again. And the visit of Donald Trump is a wonderful example. Who is going to celebrate the fact that it was a success? I imagine that there's probably some muted clinking of glasses in Downing Street. And what qualifies a success? Well, it wasn't a disaster, and Trump left happier than he arrived. But it means you've been pandering to a hideous human being, a man who continues to lie about election results while claiming to defend democracy, a man who tried to sue a woman who accused him of rape and for libel and lost, a self-confessed sex offender when it comes to what he's boasted about liking to do to women when he meets them, a serial liar, an obvious racist. All of these things render Donald Trump absolutely hideous to anybody honest, decent or fair. But Keir Starmer still had to roll out the red carpet. Keir Starmer still had to bend the knee. He has no choice. And he did it, I'm afraid, I hesitate to use this word, he did it brilliantly. So how do you turn that into a negative? Especially if you are not deeply disturbed and disgusted by all of the attributes of Trump that I've just described. How on earth do you turn this visit into a negative if you are one of those people in the UK media responsible for bringing us Brexit, bringing us Boris Johnson, bringing us austerity, bringing us Liz Truss, and in recent years, of course, either staying silent or cheering enthusiastically from the sidelines as Israel embarked upon its genocide in Gaza? What an incredible track record of opinion-based journalism those 5 events would create. But it doesn't stop them, not for a nanosecond, from wading into another one. And on this occasion, it'll be, how can we turn Trump's visit into a negative? All the lefties will be wringing their hands about how awful it is to have treated somebody so disgusting, so lavishly. They probably even feel sorry for the king this week. But how do we, the people who brought you Brexit, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, austerity, how on earth do we turn this into a negative for the poor, credulous fools that pay our wages? Well, I'll tell you, front page of the Daily Mail, it's an absolute masterpiece of the genre. We almost need a new game. I don't think Unhinged even does. So we've got to imagine the editorial meeting. We've got to turn it into a negative. Trump lied. Starmer smiled. But we can't attack Trump for all the lies because we're on the same side of the political... Look, let's not beat about the bush. We love his racism. We love his racism more than we love our own country. So what we're going to do is that we're going to big up the massive racist and use him to criticise our own Prime Minister. And tomorrow we'll run a big article about how patriotic we all are. So they go with the front page. Trump shows PM who's boss. Can you think of a more disgusting position to adopt in a sovereign, patriotic nation than to side with a disgusting human being like Donald Trump and use him as a weapon with which to hit your own Prime Minister over the head? Absolutely extraordinary. Who came out of it better? Was it Keir Starmer, who is honest and who has never been accused of rape, who has never denied an election result, who has never set his own baying mob upon the heart of democracy in his own country while they called for the blood of his own vice president? He has never boasted about grabbing women by the genital. Who came out on top? Is it? I mean, what on earth is going on? And these are the people who claim to be patriotic. Up with the Mango Mussolini, down with the democratically elected UK Prime Minister. But it's funny. You take your pleasure where you can at this point in history, because if I told you to vote for Brexit, if I told you to vote for that Boris Johnson was going to be a brilliant Prime Minister, that austerity was the necessary response to an international financial crisis brought about by fetishising wealth and sucking up to bankers, if I'd greeted Liz Truss's fiscal event with rubbing my hands and describing it as the best thing since sliced bread, if I had been spending much of the last couple of years explaining why Israel has the right to do whatever the hell it wants to the Palestinian people, I probably would have lost touch with reality completely by now, and I probably wouldn't notice how disgusting and disloyal I was being when I put together a front page essentially trying to pretend that Donald Trump somehow comes out of a beauty contest with Keir Starmer as the winner. Leveson 2, anybody? Don't hold your breath. So what on earth is the question that we puzzle over today? What on earth is the correct way to mark this? Because it's absolutely horrible. I think we'll just counsel each other, shall we? Should we just do an hour of therapy together? You be my therapist and I'll be yours. And then at the end we can have a big hug and a big cuddle. Because it's horrible. This is a truly horrible moment. Keir Starmer has played a blinder. But he's played a blinder on a pitch that we do not want to be on. Donald Trump has been successfully, cajoled, mollycoddled, preened, tickled, stroked. His ego, his hideous, narcissistic ego has been successfully more than mollified. What's a bigger word than mollified? He's been played beautifully by Keir Starmer and, God bless him, by the King. He's been treated like a cross between, the Duke of Wellington and... who's like the one person you can say from the whole of history that everybody would agree was a jolly good egg and a deeply honourable person? I'd say Gandhi, but it'd upset the racists. Who are we going to go with? There's a cross between, I don't know, Winston Churchill? No, there aren't anyone. Jesus. It's like a cross between Jesus and the Duke of Wellington. No, it just doesn't work. But no one has ever been treated like that before. For once, Trump's hyperbole will actually be accurate. No one has ever been treated like this, but they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs. And it's extraordinary, right? They pulled it off. This disgusting man has been treated like a hero, like a conquering hero. And the UK had no choice. And one of the reasons that the UK had no choice but to do this is because of what we've been reduced to by, altogether now, Brexit, Boris Johnson, austerity, and Liz Truss. By precisely the people putting together front pages now saying Trump shows PM who's boss. Editor of the Daily Mail, Ted Verity, probably too stupid to realise that the reason why Keir Starmer is left with no choice but to bend the knee to a hideous man is because of what the United Kingdom has been reduced to as a consequence of appalling government and ludicrous self-harm in the context of leaving the biggest single market in the world. That is the choice we were left with. So how do we do this? I think we just counsel each other today. Assuaged is a nice word. Satiated. Satiated. I don't think I can say that word on the radio, Anthony, but thank you for the suggestion. I think I want to tell you what has happened, and I want you to tell me whether or not you agree. So what we have just seen is awful, but it's the best possible outcome in the current context. So I was toying with the idea of asking you whether you'd rather he hadn't come at all, whether Keir Starmer made a mistake by offering this unprecedented second state visit, whether it was a sacrifice too far of principle upon the altar of pragmatism, whether the Ming vase was not worth carrying over the ice rink. But the contortions of right-wing media are so absurd, so redolent, reminiscent, in fact, of the madness that they were embarked upon when they were telling us that High Court judges are our enemies, that democracy is disastrous, that elected politicians shouldn't have any say whatsoever in the direction of the country, when our universities were hotbeds of radicalism and obnoxiousness, all of that madness back in the day. Just a little wobble. It's not coming back in full force, but goodness me, the desperation to portray something that people who believe in fairness and equality, or the, quotes, left, end quotes, as they are sometimes referred to, are not going to be enjoying or celebrating this moment. But people on the, quotes, right, end quotes, are so curdled with loathing and bitterness that they have to try and turn an obvious positive, an obvious success into a negative. And it is, forgive me, I take my fun where I find it these days, it is incredibly funny to watch. But enough about them. What about you? What's this visit done to you? What's it done to your sense of Britishness? What's it done to your attitude to government, to Keir Starmer, to the role of our country on the world stage at the moment? How has it left you feeling? Because when I said I'll tell you what's happened and you'll tell me whether I'm right or not, I was working towards that description, really. Keir Starmer has done something that has left us all soiled. But not only did he have no choice, he's done it really well. He's emerged with dignity. He has emerged with as much dignity as possible. And that's the phrase I want you to focus on, as much as possible. I think this has gone as well as anybody could have hoped. Do you agree? And remember, you're allowed to say yes, but it might be more fun if you say no. Hopefully we'll get plenty of both. This state visit from Donald Trump, albeit that he has lied, albeit that he's ridden roughshod over some of our traditions and our norms, albeit that he has deliberately and very willfully insulted the most successful mayor in the history of our capital city, the most electorally successful mayor in the history of our capital city, albeit that he is an objectively disgusting human being who, back home in America, is now embarked upon a McCarthyite determination to shut down dissent, to criminalise criticism, and to silence free speech. Starmer had no choice. Discuss. And it went about as well as anybody could have hoped, which is why the Daily Mail is in such paroxysms of confusion and bitterness this morning, even more than usual. And of course, sometimes when I say the Daily Mail, I use it as a catch-all term to describe all the client journalists that brought you Brexit, Boris Johnson, austerity, Liz Truss, and were cheering on genocide in Gaza until very, very recently. Do you agree that it could not have gone better? 0345 6060 973. And if you disagree, tell me why. Hit the numbers now. You really will get through.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 17 minutes after 10. I suppose it could all backfire if he, a month from now has sort of returned to that terminally online perspective, beloved of so many members of the far right in the United States of America, and starts peddling lies about free speech problems in this country and various other abuses and obnoxious comments about our democratically elected politicians, most obviously the Mayor of London, but he could easily extend that to our Prime Minister or possibly even our Muslim Home Secretary. Remember when he didn't want Sajid Javid, or when Sajid Javid was mysteriously excluded from the state banquet at the last state visit, even though he was Home Secretary at the time, because Sajid Javid had objected to Donald Trump retweeting the far-right organisation Britain First. I mean, it is a crazy, crazy time. And one of the most wonderful things about getting to spend every morning with you is that sometimes we need to remind each other how crazy everything is. And few things are crazier than, if not celebrating, then acknowledging the great success of an exercise in sycophancy towards a hideous person. But that is what we've just witnessed. A highly successful, sycophantic display. Did we have any choice? And do you agree that it went about as well as anybody could expect? 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. Let's have a look at some text and then we'll hit the phones even. Gary writes, it's like going to bed with someone and waking up with regrets, but knowing I can have a shower and wash it all away. That, Gary, whether you know it or not, is almost exactly, before I get all prissy and start complaining about your vulgarity, that is almost exactly the line taken by the cartoonist in the Times newspaper this morning. And a splendid cartoon it is as well. Mayhair writes, good morning, James. I saw 2 minutes of the joint press conference where Trump denied knowing Peter Mandelson and passed the buck to Keir Starmer to pick up the pieces. You're right. And Keir Starmer did pick up the pieces in hideous circumstances, which is, if you like, the central thrust of this whole Phone in. And speaking of phone-ins, we better get one on. Sammy's in Lambeth. Sammy, what would you like to say?
Hello there. Yeah, I don't think Keir Starmer could have really done anything. I mean, if he had stopped and said, hey, all of this stuff that's going on that is counter to British values, we're not very happy about that. What would the response be? What would that gain?
They'd kneecap him.
They'd kneecap him, yeah, exactly. And we wouldn't like that. I mean, everyone said that we needed a leader.
The Daily Mail would. I think the pretense of the right wing in this country that they care about this country has almost completely disappeared over the last couple of days. They would much rather bend the knee sincerely to a racist, self-confessed sex offender who denies democracy and lies about election results than they would simply stick up for a prime minister who they may not like much, but who is, at the end of the day, British.
Do you think most of the right wing in this country would agree that Donald Trump is a strong leader?
Well, I don't know what you mean by strong leader. His approval ratings are, I think, arguably, I think they might be even lower than Keir Starmer's at the moment. But I mean, and everything is going wrong in the United States of America. But he's a strong cult leader, an effective cult leader. Yes,
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I just wasn't expecting so many members of the British political and media classes to join the cult, I suppose.
Exactly. That's how it feels here. Is there's a loss of the centre ground.
Yes.
So they're just like, okay, well, there's corruption, or there's this isn't going properly, with no citations, no proof or evidence of what's going wrong, but things are just wrong. And that Trump is at least someone trying to address them. I mean, this is misguided. I disagree with it. But that is kind of
just describing populism. What if, counterfactual, and I'll probably ask every caller this if I remember, what if it hadn't happened at all? How do we know whether we would be in better or worse shape, or the transatlantic relationship would be better or worse shape? I don't know how deep these business announcements run. Quite often when Trump announces things, everyone forgets about it, and it turns out not to be anything like the thing that was announced. Starmer less so. But what if he'd never come at all? Would we be on a better or a worse footing?
So do you know if Trump, do we know, does the public know if Trump initiated this meeting, or did we just send an invite?
No, we did it. We took him by surprise.
I think that's the correct move, because look at all the way we're linked to the US in terms of intelligence, defense, business, contracts. There's far more to this relationship. We'd rather weather the storm for now and make sure that those are maintained, and that he's not putting every connection with the UK under a microscope and trying to twist it into something.
I mean, listen, nobody is celebrating, because even people like me and I think like you, who recognise that Starmer has actually done another Ming Vase moment here, and that it is very, very much to the benefit of Britain. Even as you make that observation and you give him the credit for that conduct, you acknowledge simultaneously how awful it is to have been put in that position, and how soiled we are by these associations, and particularly by these displays of sycophancy. But we have no choice. It's a mark of the world order, if you like, and it's a mark of how newly diminished we are by the last 14 years, and particularly, of course, by Brexit. And that's it. So no one is celebrating. It's the weirdest thing. If you're a huge fan of Keir Starmer, you're not dancing around the room at the moment going, ha-ha, like that, do you remember that foreign football commentator who just listed loads of famous English people when they beat us in a football game? Take that. There is none of that going on, which is really weird. It's almost hard to have a strong opinion about this, because if you are warm or positive, it is immediately polluted and diluted by the knowledge of who it is that Keir Starmer has so successfully dealt with. Jeff's in Woking. Jeff, what would you like to say?
Morning, James.
Hello, Jeff.
I think the state visit was acceptable and correct, because it is the president's second term. It's not like he's been invited over here twice in the one term.
No, true.
But, and I think it was a necessary evil, if you like, because it was something that was necessary to cement the trade relationship between
or at least
the
to
UK.
At least to try.
Well, yes, the proof of the pudding, yeah. But I think they both went away on good terms, and it appeared to the world that they were on good terms, which is a good thing in a way, I think.
Yeah.
So I think it was a success. I think the royal family pulled out all the stops, as did the government. And I thought the Prime Minister did what he had to do and as well as he could do it.
That phrase, I should really have used it myself by 10:25 this morning, necessary evil, because that is why you can't celebrate, because it's evil. But it was good.
Yeah, I mean, the evil part of it, James, is the fact that you and I, and I suspect a lot of other people, don't necessarily agree with the President's behaviour and his lifestyle and his politics. But however,
he's the president.
He is the president, the most powerful person in the world, and we have to maintain a relationship, a contact with him.
And we haven't just done that. We've gone above and beyond, and the further we've gone beyond, the better a result it is.
Indeed. Yeah. I look forward to the trade benefits that result in the state visit.
If indeed, well, yeah, fingers crossed, because again, that these announcements often turn out to be a lot of sound and fury signifying nothing. Thank you, Jeff. Very nicely put. It is a necessary evil, and that's why you can't really celebrate it. And it's why some members of the right-wing media are reduced to, frankly, extraordinary and hilarious attempts to turn it into some kind of beauty contest. Well, Keir Starmer's done better than anybody expected here. What can we do? I know. Who's got the biggest dad? Keir Starmer or Donald Trump? Whose daddy is big? Who'd win in a fight between Keir Starmer's dad and Donald Trump's dad? 0345 606 0973. Call me now. Who's got the biggest hands? Nick's in Huntington. Nick, what would you like to say?
I was going to say best out of a bad situation, but necessary evil, that's much better. I like that a lot.
Yes.
I think you put it correctly. Keir Starmer played it as well as he could. I don't think anybody could have done any better, but I think he played his cards too soon. I think when he went over initially to do the tariff deal, Trump was desperate for somebody to do a tariff deal with him, and he would have been absolutely gleeful to have Keir Starmer there, do his tariff deal, and I think Keir Starmer could have just said, and I am currently in talks with the King about a future state visit, and he could have held that card back.
I disagree with you about the tariffs. I think the whole point of that process was to inflict, not to negotiate, and we've come out of that better than some other countries have done, but not much. But I agree with you potentially about the premature invitation.
Yeah, I think he could have held that over Donald Trump much longer, and Donald Trump would have been itching for it.
Well, he clearly was itching for it. I mean,
we could have played it at a later date. So you deliver the letter. You had to deliver the letter to the King, I think, because that was the moment. That was the diplomatic coup, if you like. And you could see that if he was made of chocolate, he'd have eaten himself at that point, Donald Trump. and somehow, I don't know enough to comment on whether this is plausible or feasible or not. Somehow, you would have been a little bit busy for a little bit longer to have the state visit this week. You'd have been like, maybe this time next year, or the King's very busy, or we've got a lot on, and we definitely want it to happen. And the longer you string it out, in many ways... I don't think Donald Trump would know any different if you told him that. No, I don't know if he would either. But this is, listen to us, talk as if we're in the corridors at St James's Palace having a big high-level diplomat. I mean, I don't know what the score is. Trump might have said, I want to go before Christmas. I want to go now. And that wouldn't leave us with an awful lot of choice in the matter, would it? Because I think one of the uncomfortable truths about this entire conversation is that he does call all the shots, and that is partly a consequence of what's happened in this country domestically, and partly a consequence of the evolving world order. Thank you, Nick. Broad consensus. I mean, listen, come from the left if you want, albeit that there's quite a lot going on to the left of the Labour Party at the moment that is unfortunate, I suppose, would be the word to choose. More on that later. It's all going a little bit People's Front of Judea. But the idea, a compelling case for this visit never having happened, why we should never even have gone there, is currently missing from the analysis. 0345 6060973 is the number that you need. And whether or not Starmer could have shown a little bit more mettle, called him out on a couple of things.
I don't know what would have been achieved by that, except, poking the bully, as it were, saying, he lied about the elections, didn't he? I didn't watch all of the press conference, but reading the reports, he seems to have lied about the elections again, which must stick in Starmer's craw, that. He's a former director of public prosecutions, and he claimed he didn't know who Peter Mandelson was, which, I mean, that's just odd, right? But what's the point in pointing out these lies? What would be achieved by doing it? There's a little bit of me, you can tell from my voice, that still kind of naively thinks he should have done, but accepts that in a pragmatic universe he couldn't. Here's Thomas Watts with your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
Proves, writes Nick, that as in all things, Starmer is doing what's best for the country, and it's about time our media, including you, James, started to acknowledge that, writes Nick in southwest London. And then he quite rightly lists much of, if not all of, the achievements thus far. Resident doctors receiving a 28% increase to the minimum wage, £7,500 of free childcare for countless families, the rolling out of breakfast clubs, the 5 million extra NHS appointments, the removal of non-dom status. I thought the last lot did that, Nick, but I'm possibly splitting hairs. The Hillsborough law that was introduced this week properly, the introduction of VAT on private schools, the establishment of a UK wealth fund, the return of some train companies to public ownership, the new Border Security Command, the formation of GB Energy, a strategic defence review, the football governance bill, the sentencing review, reductions to costs of school uniforms, removing that £200 limit on shoplifting prosecutions. I think that's coming down the slipway. Independent Ethics and Integrity Commission, giving the vote to 16 and 17-year-olds, removing more hereditary peers, banning trail hunting, protecting shop workers from threats and violence, restoring mandatory housing targets, and removing the use of offshore trusts to avoid inheritance tax. But apparently, writes Nick, he has done nothing. And you make a very powerful point, and it's, I think, probably even a fair criticism of me as well. Although, please remember, next time you're going to criticise me, to begin your message with the words, "I love you, James, but..." So, is this another one that we chalk up as a necessary evil and therefore a considerable success, albeit in a game that we wish we didn't have to play? Bella is in Bristol. Bella, what would you like to say?
Oh, hi, James.
Hello.
I'm a really big fan of yours. I've been for years, so I'm a bit nervous.
Well, don't be silly. It's only me.
But I'm a little bit sad listening this morning, and that's why after years of listening, it's the first time I've called, because I think you always have a choice, and there might not be good choices, there might not be easy choices, but you do always have a choice. And I think it's really insulting to say to anyone who has been kidnapped off the street by Trump, raped by Trump, fired by him, silenced by him.
So, I mean, we know that people have accused him of rape, and he sued one of them for libel, and he lost. But that's probably as far as we'll go down that particular road. Self-confessed sex offender is perfectly feasible because he boasts about sexually assaulting women, of course. But to say to them, we have no choice but to bend the knee, you're right, it is quite insulting, and you don't buy the necessary evil defence.
Well, but I think that the evil is in providing him with legitimacy from the Crown and from our own country, which says it's a bastion of democracy and free speech. And I don't know how you can marry those up. And if you look at things like the Tommy Robinson protest and we wonder, how does this happen and how does Nigel Farage get away with it? Well, because we don't stand up to it, because we invite people like Trump into our country and we stand on ceremony and we debase our royal family to pander to him. And I don't know then who are we then? Are we not complicit?
Yes, I suppose we are. And that is the reason why I opened the show this morning by using the somewhat inadequate word bonkers to describe what is going on, because I do feel still, despite you giving me great pause, that this is the necessary and hideous course that Keir Starmer must follow. But you remind us of the hideousness and what we are legitimising and normalising. January the 6th alone should be a reason to be rendered politically persona non grata. But the American people have made that decision. And in some ways, I would counter your points by reminding you of that. It's not us that have legitimised him. It's the office of the United States President that is being honoured, albeit that it's currently occupied by a ludicrous man-child.
I think you have to accept that if you're going to throw him a literal parade and bring out all of the pomp and circumstance, that is beyond just accepting that we have to have difficult meetings with difficult people.
Absolutely. It's keeping him sweet. It's going beyond it. It is mollifying a bully. It's pacifying a violent abuser.
It's celebrating him, and it's showing the world that we won't stand up to this, and actually then I think we have to have some mea culpa for why the far right is spreading, because we don't stand up to it. And making moral and principled stances involves sacrifice. And, not so long ago, people had to make the ultimate sacrifice for that. And let's not end up there again. Look at Chamberlain and appeasement. Do you know what I mean? I don't know how we're all standing by and saying, well, it's really unfortunate, but, it had to be done. What a shame. It's like, no, this is our humanity. Well, I don't get it. So I just wanted to say that.
Well, don't go.
It might be idealistic.
Well, but, I mean, it is. But what's wrong with that? I'm glad you were listening today, and I'm glad you rang in. We needed this contribution, Bella. Albeit that you've knocked the stuffing out of my kind of my mood a bit, but I needed this contribution because you're right to remind us of what we lose in moments like this. It doesn't necessarily change the metrics of the conversation about whether we had any choice. Of course we had a choice, but it doesn't mean that this was the wrong choice. But you're right, it's a bit of a cop-out, isn't it, to say we had no choice. We have chosen to normalise a hideous human being who represents a deeply dangerous political movement. And the silencing of free speech this week is probably not even in the top 10 scary things that have happened. You track all the way back to January the 6th. And I don't know. I mean, are we all part of the problem? Even those of us who do call it out and argue that it's a necessary evil, are we just like a sort of a no-fat version of the absolutely ridiculous members of the media who are sort of trying to turn it into a beauty contest? The editor of the Daily Mail sort of, hasn't Donald Trump made Keir Starmer look bad? It's incredibly pathetic, but unless you're standing there saying what Bella says, no, we're better than this, we are better than this, then you're arguably being a little bit pathetic too. Oh boy. Thank you, Bella. 10:40, Justin's in Purley. Justin, what do you think?
I think Keir Starmer played an absolute blinder, James.
Yeah, well, I did until Bella rang in.
Yeah, I do get her point. We have kind of sold our soul to the devil for money and position, but to be quite honest, he needed to. We need to quell the beast, as it were.
Yeah,
and get him on our side, which is what he's pretty much done. If you look at him, he was smiling like a lunatic yesterday with Keir Starmer. They had a lot of banter going on. It was a really good relationship happening, and we got the money at the end of the day. So the investment is the thing we were going for. We've got that, and I think we've got Trump on our side for a while. So even though he is a rather repulsive individual, I'll give you that.
Sure.
We need the American people. We need the American government with us. If we're going to do anything.
Whoever is in the White House, we are better with them looking at us warmly than we are with them not looking at us warmly.
Exactly. And then the Daily Mail, unbelievable.
Come on, it's funny though. Who's got the biggest car? Donald Trump or Keir Starmer? Whose daddy would win in a fight? Donald Trump or Keir Starmer?
It's the Telegraph as well. They managed to bring what's his name, Farage into it. I'm just like, how did you manage that?
Who?
They've got it on the front page. They brought it in their column. They put him down. Oh yes, Nigel Farage did this, that, and the other. I'm thinking he wasn't even there, but he wasn't invited, and he's very sulky right about now. But we'll leave him alone. So no, I'm talking about that chap.
No, fair enough. And you don't. I mean, Bella's point is. I don't know. It's discomforting is my word of the day.
It is.
And yet we both clearly feel that he didn't have any real choice. I'm going to insert the word real because the alternative is to make an enemy of a very powerful, very dangerous, inconsistent bully.
Exactly. And I was saying I was on TikTok Live last night and I was chatting to a load of people and I was saying that the papers this morning are going to avoid everything that he has done good and focus on something that's bad. And they did exactly that.
Well, You're a better student of it than I am, then, because I was actually surprised this morning. But you sort of found yourself stumbling across attempts to turn it into a game of top trumps with the patriotic British journalists siding with the Mango Mussolini against their own democratically elected Prime Minister. It's absolutely who'd win in a fight? Who'd win in a race? It's absolutely pathetic.
It is absolutely. But you got to look at how we was acting yesterday. It went really, really well, and he delivered £150 billion worth of interest or investment into our country, which is fantastic. They haven't run with any of that going on. They had good banter. It was really good to see them actually getting on quite well.
You've gone a little further than me there, which is fine. It's a nice corrective or counter to Bella's call, but I cringe a bit. I got one message saying I'm amazed that Keir Starmer's got any bottom lip left. He was chewing it so hard through an awful lot of that encounter. And Kelly writes, I'm holding my nose, but I do agree. So let's have a little listen to some of the stuff that went on. Well, actually, before we listen to a little bit of what happened yesterday, have a little listen to this from May of this year in Donald Trump's Oval Office.
The template of 10 is probably the lowest end, and therefore they made that deal. But they we've had just a very special relationship with them. Like, I won't do that deal with cars. I mean, unless somebody shows me that there's another kind of a car that's comparable to a Rolls-Royce. And there aren't too many. This is a good commercial for Rolls-Royce. They're going to order a lot of cars.
Mr. President, I wonder whether you'd like to buy.
Well, the last time this happened, I ended up...
I would be happy to suggest a discount, obviously a very modest discount. We have to protect our profit margins.
I've had many of them, actually.
Peter Mandelson there suggesting Donald Trump might like to buy a Rolls-Royce in Donald Trump's office at the Oval, at the White House. And this is Donald Trump yesterday.
The elephant in the room, Lord Mandelson, he is no longer the ambassador. Do you have some sympathy with him that he lost his job over historic links to Jeffrey Epstein? Thank you very much, sir.
I don't know him, actually. I had heard that, and I think maybe the Prime Minister would be better speaking of that. That was a choice that he made, and I don't know. What is your answer to that?
Here you go. That is what's known as a hospital pass in rugby. It's when you throw the ball to your teammate shortly before your teammate gets absolutely squashed by the opposition number 8 or possibly number 4. One of the biggest players on the rugby. I think that's what a hospital pass is. That's what I've always understood it to be. But that was, and of course it was okay because Starmer's already dealt with all of that stuff. But that is, a bit of what Bella was talking about there, because it's not, the lying is not confined. Farage deals with questions like that as well. He'll just lie. I bought a house, and then 2 weeks later, oh well, no, I haven't actually. My girlfriend bought it. The girlfriend that was so skint a few years ago, she had to work as a waitress to make ends meet. But I don't know, maybe she won the lottery. But of course, British journalists still haven't got the habit or got the hang of going after those particular rabbits. But you can. If you lie all the time, you get away with lying. The only people who get into trouble for lying are the people that don't lie all the time. It's a bit like house purchases and stamp duty. If you are widely regarded as deeply dishonest, oddly, you'll get away with a lot more than somebody who is widely regarded as honest, but who has been dishonest on this occasion or being stupid. It's an extraordinary contrast. It's proof of it in our political discourse almost every day. But there it is. There's Donald Trump lying. Imagine the United States president thinking the best way I can get out of this is to pretend that I don't know who the ambassador is and I've missed the news all week about him being fired. As someone whose interest in British politics is so acute and so keen that not long ago he was retweeting the fascists from Britain First. That's another reason why I disagree with Bella. Even though she thinks we're normalising that kind of behaviour by sucking up to Trump, he is such a hideous human that he'd go all in. He'd go all in on backing the far right in this country. He'd go all in on backing the fascists in this country if he thought it suited his interests, and therefore keeping the bully sweet. And I know there's a form here of saying, if I tell you that you're wonderful, do you promise not to punch me? It's a hideous equation. But what if it's true? What if he will punch you if you don't tell him that he's wonderful? Oh man, I told you it was, well, discomforting or soiling even.
James O'Brien on LBC.
You probably don't remember this, but Vladimir Putin had a state visit to this country I think in 2003. So I think Robert Mugabe, didn't he get the full red carpet treatment? We routinely expect the monarch to entertain potentates who have not been democratically elected. I mean, in a way, that there isn't much unprecedented about this state visit, except the level of pomp and circumstance that was on display, and that was designed very much to keep the bully sweet. And it appears to have worked, despite that being one of the things we're taught as children, that you should always stand up to a bully. But you're also taught, of course, that sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt you, which I believe the talk show host Jimmy Kimmel can confirm is a load of old nonsense. Some people get incredibly hurt by words. I think we all do. I think about this quite a bit. And one thing I find helpful is the notion that you are traumatised as a child. You can be traumatised as a child by non-physical abuse, not just emotional abuse. But have you ever seen a parent absolutely bellowing at a child? And I mean bellowing. There's something about the loss of control in humans that's frightening, right? But imagine what that does to a child. And it occurred to me that it doesn't matter what's being shouted. If it's being shouted loud enough at you, then it can be a discombobulating or even a traumatic experience. And those are words. Someone screaming at you, even if you know it's not true. Someone's screaming lies at you. It's why footballers have to develop such extraordinarily thick skin, and it's why very, very occasionally, Eric Cantona, anybody, they snap, because it is very, very stressful. It can be very, very high pressured. And on we go. I just want to give a quick shout to the LBC digital team, whose Instagram game at the moment is absolutely exceptional. I've not really got my head around. I haven't got the hang of Instagram or TikTok, and I probably have to, not least as a consequence of having abandoned Twitter to the racists. I stumbled across this. Someone showed it to me this morning, and it's brilliant. It works on the radio, but you should probably go and have a look at it as well, because the way that they've... I want you to see Keir Starmer's face, is what I really want you to see during this moment at the press conference yesterday. And just a quick shout to Leo and Mari in our digital team for putting together this mini masterpiece.
To think that we settled Azerbaijan and Albania as an example, it was going on for years.
He doesn't mean Albania, he means Armenia. The last time Albania was at war with anyone was in 1954, and Donald Trump was 8 years old.
It's even better when you see the pictures with it as well. So he couldn't even say Azerbaijan. For any other world leader claiming credit for solving a war, you'd think that mispronouncing one of the countries involved would be about as bad as it can get. But when it's Donald, that's not as bad as it can get. That's only the second worst thing from that tiny, tiny boast and lie, of course. The worst thing you could do is actually get the name of one of the countries completely wrong. But on we go. David's in Dundee. David, what would you like to say?
Hello, James. Long-time listener. Big fan of the show.
Thank you.
I phoned up because I really wanted to agree more with Bella.
Yes.
About what's going on. I think that we can't really divorce what's happening here with the pomp and circumstance and what's happening in the direction of travel in America. We've seen examples now with the likes of Columbia University, the news networks. They give in to Trump, but it only holds for a certain period of time. He comes back for more. So I kind of wonder if, that what was said earlier about going too big too early.
Yeah.
We've given them so much, but then how do you contain a really capricious and narcissistic man?
I don't know. And that is the worry, isn't it? It doesn't make what they've done wrong. It just means that any sort of muted celebration will turn to sawdust in the mouths of the celebrators in the coming months and years. What I didn't have and I should have done when Bella rang in, was the list, and I thank Frederick for providing this, of other leaders, other world leaders who have enjoyed state visits or lavish hospitality. You know, you've got the King of Saudi, you've got Xi Jinping, Putin himself, Robert Mugabe, I think Ceausescu got the full kit and caboodle at some point. So, you know, that slightly dilutes the accusation that we are doing something out of the ordinary when we normalise this regime.
I don't necessarily think that what we're doing is, I mean, you know, the royal family have got a very checkered and colourful history with people that we probably don't like very much. But I just feel that, you know, it's very early to go on this one. And we know that American, I mean, I think the one that's probably slightly off tack, but, you know, the fact that we've seen Trump eroding every single constitutional right that the Americans have, and now the fact that he's prescribed Antifa as a terrorist organisation when Antifa doesn't really exist as an organisation.
Yes.
So it's going to go from brown people getting snatched off the streets to white people that we say is a fascist, anti-fascist, is against us.
And all the time claiming that they're the big defenders of free speech and maligning this country with the connivance of right-wing journalists and politicians in this country who claim to be patriots. That's why I think the word bonkers barely touches the sides of what we're actually witnessing, and that's another timely reminder of some of the detail. Keith, thank you, David. Keith is in Doncaster. Keith, what would you like to say?
Morning, James.
Hello, Keith.
So, sadly, I agree with your take on the necessary evil, feeling foiled, etc., etc. However, I might be able to cheer us up a little bit with a sort of letter from America moment.
Oh, yes.
I've lived and worked all over the States in various parts of my life, and I've got lots of friends right across the nation. And, of course, it's a bubble. But the feedback I'm getting from all of them is, we kind of understood why you had to do what you did, but they are so impressed with the things we did, like the Led by Donkeys projection, the giant photograph, the Channel 4 piece. They're the feedback I'm getting from across the pond is, thank goodness you guys over there have still got the ball to stand up to him.
Well, isn't that interesting? Because, you know, you never know, do you, what reach things have. So some of my contemplations last week on the attempts to clamp down on free speech after the murder of Charlie Kirk went a bit bonkers as well. I think one of them went over 2 million on YouTube, and that is a largely US audience. So they can crunch the numbers. I mean, it's a tiny fraction of the population, but if they're clamping down on free speech over there, as they clearly are, then I suppose our exercise of free speech over here will look very refreshing and very exciting.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, Rolling Stone carried a piece on the Channel 4 piece. So, you know, it's quite widely reported, obviously, across the section of media. But yeah, so I thought we'd just, you know, whilst I agree with everything you said and you know, most of the other callers this morning, I just thought I'd give that little bit of perspective that there is a big chunk of the US, or I'll rephrase that, a big chunk of my bubble of the US population that thinks, thank goodness, that you guys can still do what you Brits do so well.
So even as they're screaming about our free speech being under threat, we've just given the Americans a masterclass in what free speech actually looks like.
100%.
Wow. Yeah, stick that in your pipe and smoke it, J.D. Vance, which is, of course, a reference or vague reference, that thing I couldn't remember earlier. It was, thank you to Davey for reminding me. Was it a Spanish football commentator who was just shouting, Lord Nelson, Maggie Thatcher, Winston Churchill, your boys took one hell of a beating. There's none of that going on today, is there? I mean, even Keir Starmer's most enthusiastic supporter would struggle to portray this as an unalloyed, joyful success. But those phrases kept popping up, didn't they? Necessary evil, most obviously, or keeping him sweet, or actually conducting a state visit from a hideous human being, which is not unprecedented, about as well as anybody could have hoped.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 3 minutes after 11, and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. This is a bit of a strange one, actually. You're probably aware of the story. You may not be aware of some of the background to it, but it speaks to a bigger issue as well, and one which popped up very clearly last week with the murder of Charlie Kirk, the right-wing activist in the United States of America, the very right-wing activist in the United States of America, which has sort of triggered this extraordinary free speech debacle on the other side of the Atlantic, and some of it leaching over here, where honouring his memory apparently involves not telling anybody what he stood for or indeed explaining to people things that he had said. So I can't use the word bonkers again. I've been using it all morning. But what it made me realise was that I should probably be paying more attention to the universe that I describe generally as terminally online. That it is ridiculous, in a way, to not be consuming more media from untraditional sources. I'm still almost analog in my media use. I've got all the streamers, obviously, but I don't watch YouTube, for example, for my news or my opinion-based inputs. I like watching Midsummer Murders repeats, frankly, when I'm at home with... But I got friends that are very plugged into this world and who, they have their Joe Rogan opinions, their opinions about Joe Rogan, because they watch a lot of it, and the podcast universe that is widely credited with propelling Donald Trump, helping to propel Donald Trump into the White House. And so it's not ridiculous that I didn't have much idea who Charlie Kirk was, but it's probably, for someone who does what I do for a living, it's probably a mistake, isn't it? Because I'm supposedly a political commentator. It's like a pompous phrase, but obviously I commentate on politics and get paid. So technically, I suppose I am a political commentator. And he was clearly a very significant political figure in a country whose politics I do actually commentate on a bit. Quite a lot in the last couple of weeks. And so to not really have much idea who he was, I remember when Turning Point was set up here, I can't remember whether I knew it was the British offshoot of an American organisation, but it was just hilarious. It was just such a bunch of inadequates and Herberts that you couldn't really take it seriously. I think did it not have something to do with the smoked salmon Brexit bloke? I think it might have done. I could have got that wrong. Forgive me if I have. But the idea or the realisation of just how huge this universe is one that I am currently processing. You can't deny it. I don't know what role I'm going to play. I don't know that I should be out there in that space more. I don't have to be because of the job that I've got. This is very boring for you. Apologies, but I'm just thinking out loud. So the clips get out there regardless of anything that I do. That's a sort of separate ecosystem. And so I'm kind of fighting the corner for my values without actually having to make content specifically for YouTube or specifically for the internet. And it continues, I believe, to do very well. So thank you for that and spreading the word. And welcome to all the people that have discovered this show as a consequence of some of the clips that have gone viral in the last couple of weeks. It's lovely to have you on board. Wait until you hear Mystery Hour. You're in for a real treat. Why am I explaining all this to you? Well, partly because I always want you to know what's going on in my mind in the interplay between my professional life and my personal life, because you are a big part of that. And secondly, because there's a story that I don't know what to make of. I genuinely don't know what to make of it, and it very, very, very much involves somebody from what you could loosely describe as the Charlie Kirk universe, a universe I know next to nothing about. So I think I'd heard of this woman more than I'd heard of him, but if you'd asked me to pin down precisely why I'd heard of her or what she stood for, I think I would have struggled. I think I probably would have chalked her up as one of the commentators of colour whose opinions seem to align more with people who often have quite negative things to say about people of colour. I choose my words very carefully. I'll be diplomatic in this space because it's a very, very sensitive stuff. But I'm talking about somebody called Candace Owens. And immediately, the multiplicity of reactions to that name kind of proves my point. I may even have pronounced it incorrectly, just as proof of my own ignorance. Candace, is it? Candace Owens So some of you are going, oh, yeah, thank God James is talking about this. Some of you are going, oh, all hail Candace Owens. Some of you are going, yeah, God, she's awful. I can't believe he's talking about her. And some of you are going, sorry, who? Sorry, what, pardon? Sorry, what part? Sorry, Jack, what, who? And that's the point, isn't it? I don't know how do we count? We need some sort of like digital finger pad that you listen to the show with, and I ask a question, I immediately get, and every single person has to answer that question, so we can't get any skewing towards engagement. So, you know, you can ask a question sometimes and you get a 100% answer, but only 10% or 1% of the people listening have bothered answering it, so it's worthless. It doesn't prove anything. It's like a Daily Express phone-in poll. It's absolutely no scientific or epistemological value whatsoever. But I wish we could force you to answer. Who has heard of Candace Owens? Hands up if you've heard of her. You haven't? No. There you go. Proves it. Why are you shaking your head like that? I'm supremely unsurprised that he hasn't heard of her. Why would he have done? I had hardly heard of Charlie Kirk last week, and some people find that shocking, and I do this stuff for a living, allegedly. So, and remember, I was on Twitter quite a lot until about a year ago. So, Candace Owens is being sued by Brigitte Macron, the wife of the French president. And if you don't know what she is suing her for, you might want to sit down. Because it's hard to think of a better illustration of what I've just tried to explain to you. Not taking these people seriously because they are mad. Right? Whether it's the British versions or the American versions, you sit here and say, how am I supposed to take these people seriously? They're mad. Because what she is being sued for is a claim, I kid you not, that Brigitte Macron is a man. How many people are suddenly thinking about Isleworth Crown Court? If you're not suddenly thinking about Isleworth Crown Court, then... Oh, no, that was Michelle Obama, wasn't it? Or was it Brigitte Macron as well? No, it was Michelle Obama. Then you don't pay enough attention to this programme. So I found myself... Oh, and this is actually relevant. I went through a period of telling you this story every day for about 2 months because it stuck with me. It hit me so hard at the time. So I was on jury service, right, at Isleworth Crown Court. I never got on a flipping jury, but there I was, minding my own business. Eavesdropping on a conversation at the next table where and I don't know why I think this is relevant, but it is, you know, an apparently educated, intelligent, well-presented woman was explaining to her fellow jurors, among other things, I've forgotten some of it, I bet you can remember more of it than I can. She was explaining to her fellow jurors that Volodymyr Zelensky had stolen all the money that had been sent to Ukraine to help them fight Russia. God knows what they're fighting Russia with if he's nicked all the money. And that he owned the 3 biggest yachts in the world, and she could prove it because she had pictures of some yachts. So she passed her phone around the table where there were some yachts on her phone. And that proves, A, that Volodymyr Zelensky owned them, and B, that he'd bought them with all the money that he'd stolen from the Ukrainian people that had been sent there for aid. So you find yourself thinking, where does she get her information from? And what I didn't find myself thinking at the time was, should I be in that space pointing out how bonkers it is? It reminded me of vaccines a little bit. And the grifters who have almost just moved from grift to grift, waiting for the one that works, telling ridiculous lies about vaccines, or telling ridiculous lies about the 2020 American election, or telling ridiculous lies about this, or telling ridiculous lies about free speech in this country. And they're all grifting in the same sort of space. They've all got their noses in the same sort of trough. And every now and then one of them gets a right lovely old truffle, and they snaffle it up, and it becomes their way of life. They might set up a free speech organisation, or they might become champion anti-vax activists, and it's all nonsense, and it's all lies, and it's all ridiculous to people like you and people like me. So when does it stop being ridiculous? When do you start taking the ridiculousness seriously? And Brigitte Macron has decided that moment is now. It is extraordinary that anybody would even bother to sue someone, that a woman would bother to sue someone for claiming that she is a man. Isn't it? Because you thought you lived in a world where nobody could take that position seriously. You thought you lived in a world where nobody could take that position seriously. But what this story suggests is that Candace Owens is taken seriously enough for this to have caused serious harm to Brigitte Macron. Serious emotional and personal harm. Macron himself has spoken about it, saying last month, "They advised us not to sue. But it has taken on such magnitude in the United States that we had to act." He told Paris Match magazine that the prolific podcaster, quotes, "knew very well that she was using false news to cause damage in the service of an ideology and with established connections with the far right." I again apologise for not knowing the answer to this question, because I increasingly think that perhaps I should. But what's the ideology that this is part of? 0345 60600973. So the President of France and his wife are now to present... I feel so sorry for this woman, I could weep. Imagine having to go through this. You know, when you are in public life or you are married to someone in public life, that your head extends so far above the parapet that you've got no idea where the next attack is going to come from or what the next attack is going to be. But I feel so sorry for this woman, because I read this morning that she is now to present scientific evidence and photographs to prove that she is a woman as they pursue this libel suit in the United States. The determination to quash these lies is such that this woman, who is 72 years old, feels she has no choice but to expose herself to this sort of scrutiny. And I had no idea when I reeled in shock from that woman in the jewellery room at Isleworth Crown Court that I was actually scratching the surface of a much, much bigger phenomenon. Even, to use Macron's own words, even an ideology. I presume that the ideology, for want of a better word, has something to do with trans people. But I don't know that for sure. I just mentioned that to highlight how authentic my ignorance in this matter is. So, I mean, I've got a side order of what the heck is going on. 0345 60600973. What on earth is going on here? If you know more about that world, you can be my spirit guide through it. But I want you to tell me whether you think she's doing the right thing. In many ways, you probably need to know more about the world inhabited by Candace Owens and the late Charlie Kirk than I do. I mean, the more you know about the world that Candace Owens inhabits, and she used to work for the Turning Point organisation, sorry, that's why I mentioned it. You probably, I don't know whether that's true. The more you know about that world, then the more you will be able to explain, or the more informed perhaps your opinion will be on whether or not Brigitte Macron is doing the right thing here. Because my attitude to absolute nonsense has almost always been to ignore it. And it depends in some part. You speak to famous people who consider suing for libel, for example. You can't really be libelled by somebody who is not taken seriously. You would, for example, struggle in a libel court. Not only would you run up enormous bills, but you would also struggle to prove reputational damage if the attempts to inflict damage were being undertaken by obvious idiots. So, I mean, libel lawyers can correct me on this. In fact, libel lawyers would be particularly welcome to ring in, although I'm not paying. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. Quite often, even though something is an obvious lie and an obvious libel, you can't prove reputational damage, because how could somebody who is ridiculous damage your reputation? But Candace Owens, the calculation by the Macrons is, Candace Owens is clearly taken seriously enough to cause genuine reputational damage and genuine emotional harm. But I still don't know if this is the right thing to do. Is she doing the right thing, or is she going to make things worse? And that's the question. 0345 6060 973. I think I'll break it down, if I may, rather than saying be my spirit guide through this world. Why does Candace Owens do this? 0345 6060 973. And is Brigitte Macron doing the right thing by responding in this way? It's 11:19. Why do they tell these lies about Brigitte Macron, about Michelle Obama, presumably about others? And are the Macrons, for whom I feel absolutely enormous sympathy, what a hideous thing to be caught up in, but that's not the same as thinking that they should fight it in court. What do you think? Should they be fighting it in court? And why is this woman doing this thing that she's doing? It's coming up to 20 past 11. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need.
James O'Brien on LBC.
4 minutes after 11. I'm overusing the word bonkers today, but and oddly, this story does speak to the Trump universe, doesn't it? And the complete denigration of truth and reality that has been ushered in by his entire life, let alone his political career. But President Macron, and this is in the Times newspaper, President Macron and his wife Brigitte are to present scientific evidence and photographs to prove that she is a woman, to bolster their libel suit in the United States against Candace Owens, the right-wing influencer. And there are days when you really begin to wonder whether or not you've woken up in the upside down. And of course, it's perfectly possible that you have. But this is a real story, and it is happening. And I want you to tell me whether or not the Macrons are doing the right thing. Paula is in Birmingham. Paula, what would you like to say?
Hey, James. Just want to say, first of all, it's a real pleasure to speak with you. So
I
thank
hope
you
so.
for my call.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to speak to you too.
I only knew of Candace through actually my niece. My niece is 20.
Right.
She moved to the UK last year. Her mum, my sister, is British, but she is French.
Right.
And last year she has taken a firm. She's become very strong in her faith. We were brought up as Christians,
okay.
And she feels that Candace Owen, what does she say, is a warrior of free speech and is exposing the lies that she feels are being trumpeted by the left, of course, and that in order for the suing that Brigitte Macron is doing is.
It's a really bad phone line, Paula, and I really, really want to hear what you've got to say, because you're obviously, I mean, your niece is obviously smack in the middle of it, so we'll try and improve that phone line and come back to you if we can, because if I thought we were just going to keep it short, then I'd have endured it, but I want to hear more from you, so let's see if there's anything that we can do about that. 23 after 11 is the time. Damien is in Woven Green in Buckinghamshire. Damien, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. I would just like to say I think that Ms. Macron is definitely doing the right thing. Unfortunately, these days, we've been forced into a position where you have to call this out. I think 10 years ago, everyone would have known how nonsense that the statement is, and
yes.
just, not even given it the time of day. But there's enough strange people out there that will just suck it up and just hear everything these people have to say and take it as gospel. And I think it's actually a good opportunity for right-thinking people to think, actually, this is an opportunity to definitively call this lady.
Would it work though? Would it do? I mean, I suppose that's part of my confusion. Is if you're dealing with this kind of conspiracy theory, somebody like, and we'll go back to Paula next, somebody like Paula's niece, even if they lose the case, would presumably say, well, that's just proof that the lizards are in control, or do you see what I mean? That the courts are in on it.
You can't trust the legal system. Yeah, exactly. I find this so frustrating, and I think I wish I was even a tenth as good as you are at it. I trying to communicate with people like this, the adrenaline surges inside of me, and I just can't. I don't know where to go with it.
Bless you. I know exactly what you mean. You get a bit flustered, and your brain starts running faster than your mouth can keep up, and all that.
I was in Windsor on Wednesday.
Yes.
With a placard, and I got strange people coming up to me, giving me quite a lot of abuse and demanding questions, answers, and stuff from me, and I don't know how to respond to them. I don't know how to get through to them, and it's so frustrating.
Yeah, it is. But you got to hang in there, and sometimes the best thing you can do is ask questions yourself. It is, ask people to justify their position, but you just get your ducks in a row on justifying your own. Why? Because you clearly know a bit more about this than I do, or a lot more. Why is Candace Owens making these claims? What's in it for her?
This particular claim, I honestly have no idea. I can only assume, they think, the French president's wife, they won't take any notice of our stuff. They might not hear about this crazy story. It'll fly under the radar. They wouldn't have been able to say the same thing about Keir Starmer's wife, I don't think, and expect it to go.
They might have done. They might
unnoticed.
No, they might have done. And I don't know. I don't think Candace Owens is on this particular page, but the woman I encountered earlier this year, very much of the view that Michelle Obama was a woman. So there's clearly a phenomenon in place. Whether or not it is, as Emmanuel Macron says, an ideology, I don't currently know. Thank you, Damien, and take care, mate. So don't beat yourself up for not always having all of the answers to all of the questions. The fact that you're on the right side of history should be a comfort to you. Let's go back to Paula, who is in Birmingham, telling me about your niece. So to paraphrase, your niece believes all this?
Yes, she does, James. Believes it with the uttermost truth.
Wow.
She's been, I don't want to say like liberal and non-liberal,
sure.
But this, my dad, bless him, he's like, I think she needs to get out and meet some more people or meet some different people. But she believes it with her uttermost truth. She believes Candace. She has like the podcast. She's been buying these books that apparently Candace has been recommending about anti-Semitism, and that's the difference with Candace Owens, is that she's also an anti-Semite. So she's on the edges of MAGA, but she's an anti-Semite as well, but she doesn't quite believe in freeing Palestine. She is a very different individual. I don't wish her any ill, but I think she's a very different individual, and I only but imagine that with this lawsuit that comes through, with the suing, I think poor Brigitte Macron, God knows what she's having to go through to prove her gender, but it will just be said, well, actually, she's just been using latex to pretend that
I'm going to steer you back to the Brigitte Macron. I don't know about her views on matters Middle Eastern, and I doubt that she would accept the accusation of being anti-Semitic, but I'm mentioning that because I obviously need to do a lot more work in this field. You're not going to believe who guest of honour at her wedding was, Paula. I'll tell you that for nothing. But do you know why she does it? What's in it for her?
I can only but imagine that being on the right of anything these days is very profitable.
But the French government's pretty right-wing. I know Macron himself isn't necessarily very right-wing, but the government that he's had to cobble together is.
But France is still very much a socialist country. It's still very much a socialist country. Elements, it is true. It's...
No, and what does your niece get out of it?
She feels that it's enhancing society and going back to traditional values and traditional views. James,
I can hear the frustration in your voice. I mean, and therefore, what else can Brigitte Macron do except live with it or fight it? And under that context, I presume you think fighting it is the right thing to do.
Of course, because one has to. If you don't stick up for what you believe is right, then who's going to do that for you? And one could say, well, actually, I know the truth, so I'm going to stick to that and just, forget everybody else. But of course, when you know the truth, you want everybody to know that truth, and it's really hard to hear lies about oneself and then pretend, oh, actually, no, it's fine. When Candace Owens, she has a really big remit. People know about her, and it's not just...
And that's why the phrase that the last caller used, and I didn't pick him up on it because I completely agree with him, but when he said strange people believe this stuff, there comes a point where you can't call them strange anymore because there's so many of them, and it includes your own niece.
It does indeed. I love her. I love her dearly, and I try to put little things in, and then she proclaims that I'm twisting everything, and that's.
Well, someone listening might have some help for you. Someone listening might have dealt with something similar. We did it a lot during COVID. Actually, how do you break people out of these conspiracy theories? And some of the most poignant calls we took, Paula, I don't know if you were listening, were from partners and loved ones who were watching their own loved one go down these rabbit holes, in some cases never to return. But there were some upbeat stories as well. There were tales of people from whose eyes the scales eventually fell. 11:31 is the time. The President of France's wife is suing a right-wing influencer, a former colleague of the late Charlie Kirk, because the right-wing influencer Candace Owens insists that she's a woman. Right, things you can say with certainty. The world has gone completely mad. Things you can't say with certainty, but I want you to tell me your view. Is she doing the right thing, or is she perhaps falling into a very publicity-shaped trap? Thomas Watts has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
11:34 is the time. This episode is blowing up, so I just want to say, after looking into this, I would stake my entire professional reputation. I should make it clear I'm reading something out that was written by someone else called Candace Owens. Imagine if someone just tuned into this and thought that I was making this announcement myself. I would stake my entire professional reputation on the fact that Brigitte Macron is in fact a man. Any journalist or publication that is trying to dismiss this plausibility is immediately identifiable as establishment. I have never seen anything like this in my life. The implications here are terrifying. I do not intend to let up on this story, and I am calling on other journalists to look into this explosive story and report accordingly. And that is the woman that Brigitte Macron and her husband are suing for libel in the United States. Are they doing the right thing, and why is Candace Owens doing what she is doing? Judging by the rather polite critiques coming into the studio, I think I must have misspoke slightly in the last bit of the last segment. For the absolute avoidance of doubt, Candace Owens accuses Brigitte Macron of being a man, not a woman, and that is why they are suing her for libel. Is it the right thing to do? Craig says yes, it's absolutely the right thing to do. While it may be a huge waste of time and resources, etc., these grifters make their livings based on these lies, and so they need to be sued and pushed back against to the point where it stops becoming economically viable. Craig, speaking to my confusion about when it's necessary, and I guess it's all about scale. It's all about how widespread your claims have gone, and one measure of that will be how much money you're making out of it. Please don't read out my name. Well done. The right use this secretly a man rubbish for multiple reasons. It's partly to embarrass the person and their partner. It's partly to add to they're lying to you about everything narrative about a person in politics or elsewhere that they want to silence. And it's also to further hatred of the trans community. By being a way of saying you never know, anyone could be trans, to try and make people suspicious of their neighbours, all in the name of othering an already marginalised and unfairly maligned community. Jason writes, it's partly a result of bots on Facebook bombarding people with nonsense. My 76-year-old mother occasionally spouts things she's seen on there, James. I myself toy with the algorithms and see the worst of it as they try to influence me one way or the other. And finally, Elise, if you denigrate your opponents and reduce them to animals, you can redefine them as non-human. Then you can still look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself you're a good person because you are still kind to other humans and the animals don't count. There's a lot going on here. But it's not immediately obvious that the Macrons are doing the right thing or the wrong thing by suing this Candace Owens character. Tony's in Greenock. Tony, what would you like to say?
It's Greenock, James.
Greenock. I've got a mental block on it now, you know. It's Greenock. Yeah, go on then.
Nice
Scotland. Tony's in Scotland.
Yeah. Right. Nice to talk to you again, James. No, I think they are doing exactly the right thing. I think, as others have alluded to, they need to be challenged. These people need to be challenged because they're doing what they're doing. And there's Candace Owens and all these other people. They're doing what they're doing because they have not been challenged before, and they go and they say something more outrageous. Then it gets more and more outrageous. It's a pattern that Trump follows as well.
It is. Yeah.
He says something. If there's pushback on it, he might fall back a wee bit on it. If there's no pushback, he then goes further and further. These people. You know, I can just imagine them all sitting in one room and somebody turns around and says, why don't you just put something up about Macron's wife being a man? And everyone has a good laugh and says, well, I'll do it, right? Okay, I'll do it. But it's worked because someone like this Candace Owens, I don't know her from Adam. I wouldn't, if she walked into the room right now, I wouldn't know who she was. But we're talking about her. Right.
Yeah. Well, that adds to that adds to the argument that they shouldn't be shining a light on it. You know the Streisand effect. You know what that is.
No.
So I spent years not knowing what this was and getting it completely wrong. So a photographer took a picture of Barbara Streisand's house, and she tried to get it taken like her beach house, secret house, if you like, and she tried to get it removed from the record. But in the process of trying to get it removed from the record, it got a gazillion times more attention than it ever would have got. No one had really even seen the picture before she started trying to get it removed from a website or a newspaper archive. And so by complaining about it in law, she ended up doing the precise opposite of what she wanted to do. And in a way, this could go down the same road for the reasons you've just articulated.
Well, can I just add, though, that in any normal world, and I'm caveating by saying that, in any normal world, as you've said, she has staked her professional reputation on the fact that she knows for 100% certainty that Macron's wife is a man. Now, Macron and his wife are going to turn around and give unequivocal, scientific, whatever kind of information, data to a public forum to say she is not a man. In any normal circumstance, her reputation should be shot. But we live in this crazy world.
That's the point, isn't it?
Yeah, we live in this crazy world where she'll just turn around and say, "Oh, well, I didn't say, you know, blah blah blah." She'll fall back on it.
Well, then you get the financial punishment, which would potentially be enough to shut somebody up. But Alex Jones is still bouncing around the place, isn't he? And I don't think he's paid the Sandy Hook families who sued him for defamation after $1.3 billion he owes them, and he's still like in the Trumposphere, isn't he? The guy that accused the Sandy Hook parents of being liars and their children of not being dead at all. So that adds to my question. But you're right. Just because the world isn't, we're letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, and you have to sue in this case because she is a significant character, albeit one that you and I are not massively familiar with. We're familiar enough with it to know why the Macrons will be doing what they're doing. Who do you think was guest of honour at her wedding?
It wouldn't be Trump, would it?
No. I'm going to keep this one bubbling. Guest of honour at the wedding of Candace Owens, the woman who is being sued for claiming that Brigitte Macron is a man. Thank you, Tony, in Greenock. Stephanie's in Northampton. Stephanie, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello.
Love your show. Love your show. I think the guest of honour was Charlie Kirk.
Well, he was there, but not the one that the Daily Mail described as the guest of honour. You're only allowed one guest. No.
Okay, all right.
Carry on. Why did you ring in?
No problem. So I rang in. You know what? Initially, I thought it's quite it's odd that the president of France would sue a podcaster, but at the same time, she has staked her entire reputation on it, and all she's done really is just repeat the work of a French journalist called Xavier Poussard. He wrote a book called Becoming Brigitte, in which he questioned pretty much everything about Brigitte Macron, why they can't find any photographs of her, or not enough photographs of her in her youth, why she decided to date her
72.
student.
I haven't got many photographs of me in my youth. Last time The Guardian asked me to find a photograph of my child, I had to cut it out and go and remove my poor little sister from the photograph, because the only one I could find, the only one I could find had her in it, and I'm 20 years younger than her.
That's a good point. But she says, there's not enough photos, and when she puts up a picture of who is supposed to be Brigitte Macron's brother alongside an adult picture of Brigitte Macron, she says that the AI that's created by these Chinese institutions shows that she looks more like who's supposed to be her brother than she does herself. So I mean,
and what is it designed to do? What is Candace Owens getting out of this?
Honestly, I guess a lot of it is actually based on her faith and her thinking that the elites are her faith. Yes, her faith. So she thinks that a lot of these elites are basically corrupting the world, and that
she's a Donald Trump fan, I think.
I think she initially was, yeah. She did back him. But now that she's seen what's happening and, what he's pretty much done to their country, which we've been covering on LBC, I don't think she's supporting anymore. I think she's sort of walking around with her tail between her legs, quite embarrassed that she encouraged so many people to support him. But
well, she can't be that embarrassed, because she's gone double down on this nonsense.
Yeah, she really believes it. Her alongside the French journalist who wrote this book, because she is just repeating what he wrote.
Do you think the Macrons are making a mistake by suing her? Presuming that they win, which, that would be then a Pyrrhic victory?
If they win, then no. No. If they win, then no. But if they lose, that's extremely embarrassing, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's such an absurd possibility that it's
how will they even prove this?
Barely worth contemplating. Well, that is the point, isn't it? It's pretty easy to prove, which is what makes the course of action pursued by this woman so crazy, Candace Owens. I guess you just bank on not being. No way is a president of France going to sue me for claiming that his wife is a man. They would never do that. But there's a threshold. For this family, for this couple, for this man and with this woman, there is a threshold beyond which you will actually do something that's potentially hazardous, because it is important, and there it is. And there it is. What's in it for her? Argyle is in Cumbernauld. Argyle, what would you like to say?
Hi, James, long-time listener.
Welcome aboard. What's going on?
So, as a younger person,
yes,
I have a bit more knowledge of these people, because unfortunately I used to inhabit that sort of sphere when I was a bit younger.
Okay.
But what I don't think Candace Owens cares about specifically who she's lying about, or, the depth of what the harm it will do. I think what she's trying to do is be part of a bigger picture, or appeal to a wide group of people by making them feel as if they're part of the enlightened. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they're the
that's
only
what
people
all
who know the
conspiracy
truth.
theories are designed to do, isn't it? Make people feel special, that they're in on something. It's unlikely that a massive secret is going to be something that you can find by tootling around on the internet for 20 minutes, but logic is not necessarily the trump card in these kind of cases.
Yeah, and in response to the other question, I think that they are right to sue them, because really you're trying to appeal to people who are not in that sphere by suing them, because I think any normal person will say, well, if they're going to court and they're willing to provide such evidence, then they must be sure that she's a woman. Do you know what I mean?
And it's a pushback. So this universe of activists or influencers or whatever you want to call them is huge, and Trump benefited from it on his path towards the White House. And so for politicians for whom the truth matters, as opposed to politicians for whom the truth is an enemy, like Donald Trump, and indeed the guest of honour at the wedding, the point has been passed where you can't just ignore it because it's ridiculous. You actually have to fight it because it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree, because the comparison I made to your researcher was, I mean, look at what happened to Alex Jones. He was made to pay out over $1 billion.
Yeah, except he hasn't paid it out, and as far as I can tell, he's still at it. Not that specific libel, necessarily, but he's still popping up on on programs and things. I don't know that successful legal action has actually shut him down or shut him up. So that is perhaps another reason to lean the other way. Do you know who the guest of honour was at the wedding?
Ben Shapiro?
No, there's another one I don't know much about. But no, it wasn't. I'll give you a clue, because I've got a guest after this, a rather important guest. It was someone who also frequently appeared on the Alex Jones show, even after Alex Jones had started spreading his vile lies about the grieving families in the Sandy Hook school massacre case. Does that help at all?
Nigel Farage?
Give the man a cigar. And it's extraordinary, isn't it? You find something hideous going on, and it's usually, what's the opposite of Kevin Bacon? 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. 2 degrees of Nigel Farage. Here is a ludicrous woman being sued for ludicrous claims about Brigitte Macron, and who was the guest of honour, to use the Daily Mail's language, at her wedding, to the son of a British Conservative peer. You got it. Nigel Farage.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 11:51 and you're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I am very sad to see my studio guest because I have seen him on several occasions before, and every one of those he has explained to me the plight that his father is facing in jail in Hong Kong, a prisoner of the Chinese regime, and every time I shake his hand on his way out of the door, I hope that next time I see him it will be because his father has been released. But he hasn't. Jimmy Lai, the 77-year-old British citizen, is still in jail for essentially freedom of expression, exercising his freedom of expression. And his son, Sebastien, whose work to get his dad released has been indefatigable, is with me, as is his lawyer, Caoilfhionn Gallagher. But I'll begin with you, Sebastien, because there was, last time I saw you, reason for optimism. On this side of the Atlantic, we felt that Keir Starmer might be more amenable than previous administrations. And on the other side of the Atlantic, Donald Trump has actually expressed a determination to help secure your dad's release.
Yeah, and we've been incredibly grateful that the president is so supportive of my father's case. On multiple occasions, he said that it's a priority. And, our government is also has also said that my father's release is a top priority. And I think now it's just getting, putting actions behind words before my father passes away. As you said, he's 77. His health is not good.
What do you rely on for full information about his condition?
So because I've gone on his behalf, I still haven't been able to go back, so I haven't seen him in 5 years. But, you hear bits and pieces because he's been on trial for the last, a few months, few years. And, one of the days he couldn't attend trial because he had to be hooked up to a heart monitor because he had heart issues. And this happened recently. But look, if you put someone who's nearly 78 in solitary confinement in a maximum security prison in Hong Kong for close to 5 years, when temperatures goes up to 30, 40 degrees Celsius, and he bakes in there, it's no surprise.
Caoilfhionn, what can be done? I mean, this is a case of just exerting diplomatic pressure on the Chinese administration, and if they keep saying, no, go away, not interested, then the exercise becomes incredibly frustrating and possibly, forgive me, possibly futile.
So the first thing to say is that there's real reason for optimism when you look at recent other cases. So the Chinese have released a whole series of political prisoners in other cases. They released the two Michaels, two Canadian men who were detained after concerted international pressure. They released Australian journalist Cheng Lai after concerted international pressure. Just in September and then November, there were a number of American citizens released, including a man called Pastor David Lynn, who's similar age profile and a pro-democracy campaigner who'd been detained for a very long time. And they also released an Irish businessman called Richard O'Halloran. Now, in all of those cases, what happened was multiple states coming together to use the leverage that they had in order to pressurise the Chinese authorities to do the right thing and to do what was required in international law. And that's what we now need here. International law is clear. Jimmy Lai's detention is arbitrary and unlawful. The UK government is clear he should be released. What we now need is a plan, a concrete plan, to secure his release before it's too late.
And earlier this week, 50 US senators wrote to the Prime Minister expressing support for President Trump's commitment to saving your dad's life, Sebastien. What's the kind of entry point? I mean, you would quite like to grab Keir Starmer by the ears, I imagine, and tell him in no uncertain terms about what's going on. But we've been here before, and we've thought that perhaps progress was being made. What's next?
I mean, we have outstanding request to meet with the Prime Minister. We have had this outstanding request since before he was Prime Minister. Obviously, a meeting with the family is important on two levels. First, to tell the family that this is indeed a top priority, but more importantly, to tell the captors that this is a top priority and that they can't keep getting away with the mistreatment of my father.
And we've got another Foreign Secretary now. Have you kept count of how many Foreign Secretaries we've had to deal with while your dad has been incarcerated?
Look, I think it's one of those things where it's been close to 5 years now, and it tells you exactly, how long he's been in there, and throughout it all, the only constant is that he's still in prison.
Why, for people who are hearing of your dad's case for the first time, why does the Chinese regime have such a problem specifically with him, especially in the context of what Caoilfhionn just told us about some of the people that they have released?
He's a man who landed in Hong Kong when he was 12 and fell in love with the freedoms and essentially became very successful in business, but knew that it was more important to use his resources to defend the freedoms of Hong Kong, and therefore started a newspaper called Apple Daily. He ran that for 25 years, him and his colleagues, with the promise that it was information that people could rely on, and using that information people could make choices, and with choices they'll have freedom. And because of that, when the National Security Law passed, he was arrested. He was one of the most vocal pro-democracy activists, but did it peacefully. So I think this idea that he was a mastermind behind the protest. Now that he's been in there for 5 years, they have all these evidence, turned out to be completely untrue. And I think the story that the Hong Kong government have sold to China is one that is false. So he turns out to be this incredibly moderate figure and a person who stayed behind and defended his journalists when he could have left at any point. 150
days now of trial.
Yeah, it was meant to be 80. It started at the end of 2023, and obviously we're towards the end of 2025 now, and it still hasn't finished.
So, I mean, Keir Starmer, Yvette Cooper, these are the politicians who could exert the attempted pressure on the administration to get him out. How much? I mean, I don't want you to tell me anything that you don't want to tell me, but how much pressure has already been exerted by previous?
So I don't know the I don't know what they talk about, but I think behind the scene, sure. I have no idea. But I think, look, it is the UK said that is a top priority, and in a time when we're getting, when the phrase they use is normalization of relationships with China. Well, we're never going to normalize a British citizen getting arrested abroad arbitrarily for whatever reason, especially when it's a case when someone stands for the very fibers of our society, the very freedoms that underpin the United Kingdom. And so I think in a situation like this, it's about telling them that, look, if you want normalization of relationship, that my father's release, my father's freedom should be a prerequisite to that.
You'll never stop. I presume your hope ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
Where is it at the moment?
Well, I mean, I always try to be optimistic. And no, you're right. Like I will never stop. This man's my father, and he's a tremendous inspiration to me and many people around the world. It's his example is a man who's done the right thing, and in doing the right thing, you can't control what anybody else does, but you can only control what you do, and it's the same for me. I'll keep doing this no matter what kind of pressure is brought upon me, and no matter what kind of happy or bad days I feel.
Caoilfhionn, what's the best thing that could happen in the next week? Would it be an invitation to Downing Street, or would it be information from Downing Street about what they were going to do next?
So it does seem astonishing to me that since January 2023, we've been waiting to meet with Keir Starmer when he was first leader of the opposition and now Prime Minister. And, I work on these cases around the world. I act for many political prisoners in different countries. And it is astonishing to me that a case which is apparently a priority has not resulted in Sebastian's own Prime Minister meeting with him to speak directly. The reason it's particularly important in a case like this is because in relation to China, a lot happens at leader to leader level. So having support from lower level officials or junior ministers doesn't necessarily carry through. The same is true, for example, of Egypt. And we all saw the spectacle of Keir Starmer only eventually meeting Alaa Abdel El Fattah's mother when she was on death's door and about to be going into hospital. And we simply should not be in a position in this country where, in order to get taken seriously, you have to go on hunger strike in the way Richard Ratcliffe did outside the Foreign Office, or go on hunger strike in the way Alaa Abdel El Fattah's mother did, or like Sebastien, have to be pleading for a meeting with your own Prime Minister. We've got to see engagement at the highest possible level, because that's how we think this case is going to get resolved.
It would be a sort of a gentleman's agreement, as it were, rather than an exercise of sophisticated diplomacy. It's about who picks up the phone to who.
Well, if you look at the other cases that have been resolved, we've spoken to the teams involved in securing the release of all those other individuals, those other political prisoners, and in all of those cases we know there was engagement at the highest possible level and with multiple countries exerting pressure. Now, we've got support from multiple countries here. Now what we need to see is a concrete plan at the highest level, and Sebastien deserves to have his own Prime Minister speaking to him directly about what that concrete plan is.
Absolutely. Well, the next time I see him, I'll do my best, but obviously you've got plenty of people fighting in your corner. While I have you, Caoilfhionn, it was some of your colleagues at Doughty Street Chambers who have been heavily involved in the case that's in our news bulletins today about Peter and Barbie Reynolds being released by the Taliban, by whom they were held without charge since February. And it's the Foreign Office that makes these announcements, and it is the Qatari government to whom the UK Special Envoy to Afghanistan has expressed the most gratitude. So an indication there of how these things are always multi-pronged or often multi-pronged approach.
Exactly right. And that's three of my colleagues. I obviously pay tribute to them and to the family who've endured this horrendous experience over the last number of months with their parents with a very similar age profile to Jimmy Lai, of course. And actually one of the team, the successful team in that case, is Tatiana Eatwell, who's a member of our legal team for Jimmy Lai. But there, what you had is the Foreign Office working with a range of other governments, and Qatar being key. And it's always about working out where's the leverage, who's the right interlocutor, and how can you convert a finding that someone is arbitrarily detained in breach of international law into actually getting them released. And there's real hope, I think, when you see those pictures today of Peter Reynolds and his wife Barbie being released finally after so much work by so many people.
Sebastien, how do you feel when you see those pictures? It must be quite bittersweet for you.
No, I mean, I'm so happy for them. You know, it gives me so much hope, because in the end of the day, it's not a zero-sum game. You know, we could stand up for it is the right thing for our country to stand up for our citizens that are unjustly arrested abroad, and the more we do it, the better we are at it, and the more people get out. It's a win-win for everybody.
Thank you, Sebastien. Thank you, Caoilfhionn. I hope that wasn't an inappropriate introduction, but I am really sorry that you're here again. For the same reason as last time, and I really, really hope that the next time I see you, we are celebrating.
Well, I hope we have a different guest with us next time, and you get to meet Jimmy Lai directly.
I'd be honoured.
Thank you.
12:02.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 6 minutes after 12, and it's another transatlantic conversation, I think. I wasn't going to do this, but the other story that was vying for your attention in the next hour is one that I think I find much more fascinating than you do. Privately educated people still have a vice-like grip on the most powerful jobs in the UK. The statistics, if anything, in the course of the years that we've spent together every day, have got actually worse. 63% of the most senior officers in the armed forces are privately educated. That's gone up by about 14% from just 6 years ago. 62% of judges, 59% of male cricketers, despite, of course, the national figure being 7% of the population go to schools where fees are paid. Even podcasters, would you believe, 45% of podcasters went to private school. 47% of political commentators, including this one, of course. That's gone up since 2019. Nearly a quarter of all MPs and half of the House of Lords are privately educated. And the same figure stands for newspaper columnists. And yet I know that you don't find it as interesting. Well, maybe you do. Maybe I've just been doing it wrong lately. But I think these two stories are linked. Because when Peter Kyle, the business secretary, told Nick earlier that there was a distinct difference between what you might describe as entrepreneurial spirit between young people in the United States of America and young people in the United Kingdom, I think he was probably right. He's not saying that people in this country don't set up businesses or anything like that. He's just saying, Peter Kyle, that we are not raised to think of that as an option in quite the same way that American young people are. But there's a crucial difference here in that I bet you privately educated people are considerably more likely to consider setting up their own businesses than non-privately educated people. So actually, you can draw a link between the two stories. Have a listen to what Peter Kyle had to say to Nick earlier today.
Let me have the opportunity to clarify, because those are words that those are individual words I used, but the meaning of which is this. I was in America a few years ago speaking to students at Stanford University, and I asked those undergraduates why they had gone to university and why they had chosen that university. Every single student in that group, which is about 12, about a dozen, said to me they had gone to that university because they wanted to start a business. Now, I think in Britain you would have to get a pretty big group of undergraduates to say that the reason they chose that university and university in itself was to start a business. So when I say drive and vigour and entrepreneurship, I want the universities who all tell me we have a brilliant set of universities in our country. We've got 4 of the top 10 universities in the world, but too often people go to university in order to explore innovation itself and explore research and knowledge for itself. But I want people to increasingly go to university with the intent of using that information and using that research, using that innovation to start businesses in our country.
I don't know what I think about this. It's a funny one, isn't it? I really like the idea. I wish I could go to university again and actually pay attention this time, and I would not be accruing knowledge or skills that I would need to start a business. I'd really like to have 3 years studying philosophy, as opposed to 3 years, 4 years actually, officially studying philosophy while actually playing snooker, and then working very, very hard for a fortnight at the end of the final year. I would love to have I probably still would mess about. I'd probably still blow it because of my character defects. But I think I'd be a little bit more assiduous in my studies now. But what business am I going to set up with a philosophy degree? What am I going to do? Come out and say, isn't there a Monty Python sketch? There usually is. I think there's a Monty Python sketch. It'd be one of those rooms you walk into, like you're going in for an argument, and you close the door. I'm terribly sorry, I didn't want an argument. And then here's a philosopher. You can come and do some philosophy. And also Stanford. I think Peter Kyle might have dropped a bit of a clanger here, personally, because Stanford is the kind of place that you would be drawn to very much because you are entrepreneurial. And he only spoke to 12 kids. If he spoke to 12 kids doing an MBA at a British school, I'm pretty sure they would have said that they wanted to set up businesses as well. I don't want to talk myself out of a topic because I'm here till 1. But I do, however, think that, well, in my experience, going back to when I was young, when I spent a bit of time in the States in my 20s, and more often than not, the kids I was knocking about with, who were not particularly privileged, I should stress, they were a lot more entrepreneurially minded. I remember one of them was he wanted to be a franchisee for a fast food chain, and he was on a course, and I think he was going to raise money, and I'm sitting there thinking, flipping heck, these guys are grown-ups, and they were the same sort of age as me. And what I found different or alien was that they didn't really care what the business was. They saw the business as a means to an end, and the end was wealth. So the first person I met from roughly my own age who'd made $1 million, everyone was very excited he'd made $1 million. He was a friend of a friend, and we were still in our 20s at the time. And he had, he'd done a sort of employment agency. He had been bringing medical staff into the country from overseas and placing them in jobs, and taking a slice of the action, I guess, taking a commission. And I remember expecting to be envious, because I would really like to be really rich. It must be great fun. That's all. It'd just be great fun. But I wasn't, because I just thought, that sounds so boring. But if you've got the entrepreneurial flair, then you're focusing on something else, something I haven't got. I'd love to make a ton of money, but it would have to be doing something that I really loved. Just making the ton of money would not be enough for me. Otherwise, maybe I would do this. But otherwise, you would have set up a business making widgets. But I'd have to find widgets sexy. Or would I? Is this actually, are you hearing now a complete failure to understand what the entrepreneurial spirit is? You're not going to believe this, but I was actually quite good at it, at making money out of So when I was a teenager, I set up a couple of things. There used to be something in London called the Gatecrasher Balls, which were frightful affairs full of hooray Henrys who would pay, I think, £15 to go to a disco, with the difference being that they were wearing a dinner jacket and a ball gown when they went. And people were making a ton of money out of this. So I decided to do it in Kidderminster. And I did it all. I hired a drum kit from UB40. This isn't even a joke. It turned out that the company I hired the drum kit was owned by UB40, so it was one of their old drum kits. I had some mates at school who were in a band, so I hired them, got them to come down. I had a DJ, I had a fortune teller in there, catering, obviously. I ordered a buffet, put together all the printing, and it was great fun, and it was a great success, and I had more money. My dad couldn't believe it. I had like wadges of cash coming out of my pockets, and then I just got a bit bored, because it was, it's just organising a disco. Whereas if I'd had an entrepreneurial flair, I'd have been doing them up and down the country. I'd have been doing 2 or 3 every school holiday in different parts of the land. I didn't have it. I could do it, but I didn't get excited about it. I don't want you to laugh at me, but I get excited pretty much every day on my way to work. And it's got very little to do with the rewards. I'm very grateful for the rewards, but the thing I love about my job is not the pay packet. And that, I think, is the crucial difference, isn't it? Between someone with an entrepreneurial flair and someone without. I've had a couple of ideas for businesses over the years. I think there's a gap in the market for an advertising agency that has a really good understanding of radio, because some of the adverts we hear on the radio are just repurposed television adverts, and some of them are absolutely appalling and shouldn't be on the radio at all, and couldn't possibly have been made by people that listen to the radio all the time. But I'm never going to get my act together to set up something like that, because it wouldn't thrill me like talking to you every day thrills me. So what I want you to do is tell me what it is. How do you describe the entrepreneurial spirit? Because I'm pretty sure I haven't got it. And yet I'm pretty sure you have. How would you put it into words? I was going to do a conversation about whether Peter Kyle is missing the point of university and that education should be an end in itself rather than a means to an end. But I think American kids, and if you've got a foot on both sides of the Atlantic, then I'd be particularly interested to hear about the comparison. I think American children grow up much more amenable to the idea of setting up a business than British children do. But I have got, for the record, absolutely nothing to back that up except a few anecdotes from 30 years ago. What do you think? So I want to do the comparison and I want to do the definition. Shall we start with the definition? 0345 6060 973 is the number you need to tell me what you understand, ideally if you've got it, but also if you haven't, entrepreneurial spirit to be. I remember a kid at school whose dad was an entrepreneur, and we used to sometimes during cadets, like army cadets, when we play soldiers, every Tuesday afternoon I think it was, and proper soldiers would visit sometimes. And one time there was like a full-on sergeant major. They were all marching up and down, and one of them asked what this lad's dad did for a living. Stuff becomes part of folklore at school, doesn't it? Sometimes. So this lad, I can see it now. I wasn't even in the space at the time. I got told about it afterwards, but I could somehow conjure up a mental image. So you've got this really ruddy-faced, angry sergeant major or whatever the rank would be for the person drilling the troops, making them march up and down, halfway up a hill, then halfway down again. When they were up there, you get the picture. And he said, "What does your dad do for a living?" And this kid said, "He's an entrepreneur." And they say, "Entrepreneur? He's an entrepreneur." I don't know why it made me laugh so much, but there was a bit of a culture clash going on there. I don't think that angle is particularly pertinent. Why going to private school would make you much more likely to be an entrepreneur, because the answer is going to be the same as why it would make you much more likely to be of a 2-star rank army officer or a flipping podcaster or a judge or a cricket professional. It's about opportunity and entitlement and social mobility. But why American young people speaking the same language, doing the same thing, why American young people would be much more amenable to the idea of setting something up themselves interests me. 0345 6060 973. And what is it? Because I haven't got it. What is it? Is it fair to say it is it's a love of making money regardless of how you're making it? Because Bill Gates wouldn't have made a ton of money doing anything else, would he? Would he? Yeah, if Bill Gates had sort of started a car washing empire, he wouldn't have. He loved doing what he was doing. But some people, they move from business to business and they are in the business of business. Is that the entrepreneurial spirit? Or is it subtler than that? Or is it more simplistic than that? What is it? I got mates who run businesses, but all of my mates run businesses that they love running. One or two of them also love the business side of it, but most of them, I've got quite a creative social circle, really. They kind of hire someone to do the business stuff. But anyway, I don't know why I'm wanging on. You know the question. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need to tell me what you think the entrepreneurial spirit is and whether or not it's true that British kids don't have it as much as, for example, American kids. It is 12:19.
James O'Brien on LBC.
Oh, no. 21 minutes after 12 is the time. I'm getting into a really weird zone now. You know, I said to you yesterday, every time I think I've had an original idea, turns out that Clive Bull did it 25 years ago. I've done this before, and I've got no memory of it at all. It must have been a report about Britons being scared to start a business and wondering why. But the question of really distilling down what entrepreneurial spirit means is the challenge that I have set before you today. Let's start in Wandsworth. Maya is there. Maya, what would you like to say?
Hi there, James.
Hello.
I really like your show.
Thank you.
I think entrepreneurial spirit, I grew up with as an entrepreneur. My dad was very, very dedicated to wanting to set up a business in the book industry. Oh, yeah. And he got rejected, but he didn't give up. But what he did do was spend all his time working as opposed to necessarily having a great family life balance. But it was dedication, and he did something that he loved, which was books.
Well, but this is the perfect example, because did he want to be a successful businessman, or did he want to be a successful bookseller? And would he have wanted to be successful in any other business?
Right. I think he loved books. That was his passion. And I think we were in America in the late 70s, and then he saw things that were happening in America with the book industry that really excited him, and he felt could be transformed over here.
I think I know who your dad is.
Okay.
Can I guess?
You can guess.
Do you have 7 siblings?
Yes.
Well, that's narrowed it down.
Yeah.
So your dad is Tim Waterstone?
He is, yeah.
And he is clearly an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he'd necessarily say he was.
That was my next question. He calls himself a bookseller.
Yeah, he had an idea to revolutionise what he loved.
Yes. And that, I don't know if that is. And so when we talk about what the entrepreneurial spirit is, then it becomes the tirelessness, the indefatigability, the absolute focus and the determination.
Yeah.
But I wonder if pure entrepreneurial spirit is more applicable in places where it doesn't matter what the product is. It's the actual business of business that drives you.
Yeah, but I would say I work in education, and I would say that
So do I.
people who do business degrees,
Yes.
actually they think they're going to be an entrepreneur, and you're like, no, actually, you're going to be a carpet salesman.
Yes.
Do a business degree if you want to find out about how to do that. Otherwise, do something that excites you.
Yeah, just get out there and play the game. Did you get... I mean, you must have been asked this question 6 million times, but did you get loads of all the books when you were a kid? All the books for free?
I'm really dyslexic, so I hated getting the books.
Oh, no!
I was just like, this is awful. I really wanted my
Dad, can't you start an ice cream business or something?
have a toy shop. But
Yes,
when
a toy shop.
When my little sisters were small, he did that. So.
Yes, he did. Of course he did. Wow, fantastic. Yeah. Well, that's going to take some beating. Thank you, Maya. That's a lovely start. But it's the perfect example, actually. I could easily have said Tim Waterstone instead of Bill Gates. I could have said, would he have been a massive success, a redesigner of the UK high street if he'd been flogging something he didn't love in the first place? I don't know how big a part of the entrepreneurial experience is the love of the thing that you're selling, because I think also of people who hop around from business to business. Don't seem to have a particular passion for what they're selling, but do have a particular passion for the bottom line, or, as I describe it, somewhat felicitously, the business of business. Steph's in Hove. Steph, what would you like to say?
Yes, well, I'd like to say that you require some kind of certain grit to be an entrepreneur.
Yes, I bet you do.
In as much as I came up with an idea and I thought, this is great, and people just jump at it.
Was it fishages? Was it sausages that are actually fish?
No, it wasn't fishages.
Oh, you can have that if you want.
That was something you came up with a few years ago, I think.
It certainly is.
But no, my idea was called Racker Stacker, and it's for stacking beer bottles in the fridge, the tall beer bottles that you can't stand up on your shelf and stop them rolling
It's a good
around.
idea.
Well, it was a good idea, and people like it and people buy it, but you need to have that drive to be after the wodge, the wonga, the money.
And do I sense that you didn't have that drive?
I don't have that drive. No, I'm more involved with the creative process and bringing the idea to the fruition and that kind of thing. And I enjoyed really working with people that I met along the way in terms of making the product work and the sort of design.
But you didn't want to go and persuade people to stock it, or
I did, but when that thing where
Go on.
I find it very difficult to big myself up to say, "Hey, this is fantastic! Look at this brilliant thing that I've come up with. You're going to love it. Everyone's going to buy it." That's not me. I'm sort of more like, "Oh, what do you think of this?"
Yeah, it makes sense to me. It makes sense to me. So you, that thing that you need is so Tim Waterstone, Mayor's dad, has got it. But he loved books as well. Yeah. You loved what you were doing, the design element of it, the creativity element of it, but you didn't love the what is the word we're looking for? The thrusting bit of it.
Exactly. I mean, even to the extent where I went onto the BBC Dragon's Den programme.
Oh yeah, gosh.
And I had a really big segment. I mean, I think I was on for a quarter of an hour or something like that on the telly, but I was actually in front of them for like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And they liked the idea, and foolishly, I turned them down. Two of them wanted to invest. I turned them down.
You turned them down?
I know. It was idiotic.
In your own mind at the time, what were you thinking when you turned that they were undervaluing your business?
No, it was more like, am I going to lose control of this? I mean, this was the early days of the product.
Yeah.
And I'd had a lot of interest, and it was almost like when I first thought of it, I didn't think I'd become a manufacturer of it, and I did. I ended up manufacturing it myself.
Right.
I thought I would just sell the idea to Budweiser or someone,
Had you got a background? Had you got a background in product design and selling ideas?
No, not at all. I've got a background.
But you're just fascinated because you're cut from one side of it. You sound like an entrepreneur, and then from the other side, you don't.
No, absolutely. From one side, absolutely, I'm not. And I just thought, well, this is an idea that is so simple and that people go for, and a beer company could put their name on it, and it could be in every fridge in the country.
And it didn't happen?
That didn't happen, but it was on the cusp of happening when I went in front of the Dragons.
So that explains why you thought you had other options developing.
But the other thing was, they said to me they wouldn't give me any money until I had my patents granted, and I knew that was going to take a couple of years. So I thought, what's the point of agreeing to this thing?
Fair enough.
That's going to be a couple of years ahead. So I said no. And but I did get my patents in the end, and so that was all good. But I didn't make the use of them that I should have done. And
it's still going, though, the business, is it?
Oh, it's still going, but it's not, it's a dribble of what it should be, I think. And that's down to me.
What a lovely bloke you are. And you honestly think that's because of your lack of entrepreneurial flair, whatever it is?
Yeah, it is definitely due to my lack of entrepreneurship. In terms of the... idea is great. I would be great if I was partnered up with someone who had that drive.
But they offered you $100,000 for 40% of your business, and that's exactly what they would have done.
Yeah, how do you know that that's what they did? That's exactly what they did.
I just Googled it.
Okay.
I'm not exactly Sherlock Holmes, Steph. Come on.
No, okay. Well, I thought maybe...
I just looked up Rakastaka. Like a lot of people have probably done. It's Rakastaka, as it were. But, I mean, weirdly, that is exactly what Dragons do, isn't it? They provide the entrepreneurial flair often for people who...
And that's the foolish thing that I didn't realise. Because I was on the programme really early days. And I
2005,
I didn't realise that they got involved. I thought they just chucked the money at you and you had to perform.
Well, you live and learn. You sound like a happy bloke. You don't sound like you spend your whole life ruining the moment you turn down.
That's been really good. So that's good. And as I say, I still churn out the Rakastaka when people buy them. And
well, I'm going to flog you a few now. Rakastaka, get yourself onto the website. And also, I have beer bottles in my fridge, and it is really I live in constant fear of one of them slipping down, because I stack them in a sort of, in the only way that you can stack bottles, and the glass shelf must break if you pull one out at the wrong time. Well, it's a brilliant idea. You're a genius. You're a bloody genius, Steph.
Well, thank you very much. That's nice to hear from you.
You're very welcome. That's really fun. Which Dragons was it? Who wanted who offered the money?
Theo Pafites.
Yeah.
And Rachel Elnor. Who had you so as I say, right at the beginning.
There you go. It's all going on today. Waterstones, Dragon's Den, Rakastaka. It's almost like this place is a sort of symposium for entrepreneurs, or not entrepreneurs, non-entrepreneurs, and me and Amelia Cox with your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 12:34. I suppose I should have just used Wikipedia, shouldn't I? This is Candace, Owens woman that we were talking about in the last hour. Did apparently set up the British version of Turning Point, and received messages of support from Jacob Rees-Mogg and Priti Patel, while the launch dinner was attended by a sort of who's who of the unbearable: Nigel Farage, Richard Tyson, Toby Young. And she's the woman now being sued by Brigitte Macron for claiming that Brigitte Macron is a man. So once again, perfect evidence of the character judgment of the likes of Rees-Mogg and Farage. Speaking of politicians who are having a tricky time, Natasha Clark is here, LBC's political editor, fresh from her duties with Donald Trump and Keir Starmer. What is going on? It's hard to cover this because Jeremy Corbyn is not a Labour MP anymore, and nor is Zara Sultana. And there was a lot of excitement on the left when they revealed that they were planning to launch their own party. And then, correct me if I get any of this wrong, and then there was a bit of a wobble because Zara Sultana made announcements that Jeremy Corbyn then tried to walk back on. And no one was entirely clear who the leader was going to be, or it was going to be both of them. And they still haven't got a name. And yesterday, an email was sent out inviting people to join and to subscribe.
Yep, that's all right so far.
What happened next?
What happened next is an example of how not to set up a political party if the examples that you've given were not already included. So what happened next? Zara Sultana, as you say, one of those MPs that is involved in setting up this new left-wing party. And like you say, it has got a lot of support. It's got a lot of people very excited, people that used to be supporters of Jeremy Corbyn, people that think the Labour Party is drifting to the right, that it's...
What you might call the triumph of hope over experience.
Well, Jeremy Corbyn's a very experienced politician.
Yeah,
so
the people who
say
support
that.
him.
I see, sure, potentially, yes. But also like, a lot of young people saying that they're excited about politics because of what the Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana are saying. So yeah, it's fair to say that it was launched. I say launched with quite a lot of fanfare a couple of months ago. Zara Sultana, as you say, jumped the gun, basically announcing it and then putting out a statement saying we're launching this new party without the okay of Jeremy Corbyn, who she was launching the party with.
Right.
Yesterday, Zara Sultana sent out a message saying, hey guys, we've launched our new membership subscription area of your party, still yet to be named. They're going to be naming it at a conference by the members later this year. Essentially, she said, sign up here, you can pay up to £55 a year for your membership. Join us today. Just a few hours later, Jeremy Corbyn had said that the site had been set up without approval. He described it as a false membership system that is collecting money and data without permission. He then confirmed that the party and several of the other MPs from the sort of independent group that he is part of...
But that's the People's Front of Judea?
No.
Judean People's Front?
No.
Okay, splitters.
Different party.
Okay, carry on.
And he then confirmed that they had referred the matter to the Information Commissioner's office. He urged all of those supporters to ignore that email requesting funds. And it's interesting, James, because you look at the IP address for the website, it's a slightly different website that Zara Sultana or her supporters has set up this membership site,
right,
which is not funded by the same organisation. So she has done something slightly different under a slightly separate umbrella. Zara Sultana then hit back, saying that she has been frozen out by a sexist boys' club inside the party.
And then, you might not even know this, but then Josiah Mortimer reported later yesterday, the chief reporter at Byline Times, that Jeremy Corbyn had been removed as a person of significant control from your party's holding company at Company's House.
Yes, but if you go onto the Company's House website, he is still a person, he's still being listed
remains
as
a
a
company
director. That's right, but he is now no longer a person with all of the same. But that is, I think, a result, and I'm told by people close to this, that is a result of adding other people into that, so he therefore no longer owns 75% of the shares. So I also got excited about that news. I don't think we should read too much into this, apart from the fact that it is absolute chaos at the heart of this new party.
Surely not.
And it's not that there's anything else.
Have seen that coming?
It's not that there's any other political chaos in any other political parties, of course.
Some people are very shocked that you've never seen Life of Brian, but people don't realise how young you are.
No, I have seen Life of Brian. No, it's ringing to not for a long time. Not since I was maybe 12 or 13.
What happens next?
What happens next? Well, actually, there's been a couple of reports out this morning. You'll find this quite funny. Diplomatic efforts are underway to settle the row that has engulfed Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana. That's according to the PA news agency reporting this morning. Sources close to the pair seeking to mediate behind the scenes to salvage the future of the as yet unnamed political venture. Okay. Can they make it work? Potentially. Look, it just goes to show that it's not easy setting up your own political party. And Zach Polanski of the Greens has jumped on this one, saying, join the Greens instead, we're a serious political organisation. On the other hand, on the other side of the political spectrum, Zia Youssef has said, from Reform has said, this is just goes to prove that it's a lot harder setting up your own party than a lot of people think.
Oh, bless. And that's the problem, isn't it? Everyone else except the people responsible are going to get the blame for this. And the factionalism presumably will be insuperable. So this now means that people who like Jeremy Corbyn will turn on Zara Sultana, and people who like Zara Sultana will turn on Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah, potentially. So their membership is apparently supposed to be opening in September. They're meant to be launching their sort of regional assemblies, having an online vote next month on the party name. I will be very closely watching an event which is meant to be taking place on Thursday, the 9th of October, with Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana together.
And do we know what happens to the 55 quid that some people will already have sent in yesterday?
Well, no, exactly. I mean, unless the Information Commissioner's office say that this has been done, without authority and without the proper rules, then sorry, you might not get that money back now.
Any reason to think that these characters may not be best placed to run an actual country?
I couldn't possibly comment on that. I mean, it's just a joke, isn't it? And I think a lot of people think it is just a total joke.
I'm sure it's a scam. I'm sure it's got absolutely nothing to do with Jeremy Corbyn.
Maybe
and
it's not.
It's all people causing trouble in the background.
Potentially someone's hacked Zara Sultana's social media account.
All
maybe.
of that.
It was the account.
It's all a scam. None of this happened.
On a serious note, though, the Labour Party...
He's the absolute boy.
The absolute boy, forgotten about that. The Labour Party are absolutely laughing about this, though, because obviously, I think it was 1 in 5 young Brits said they would be prepared to possibly support Jeremy Corbyn's party at the next election.
Listen, it's the story of Jeremy Corbyn's whole sort of, post-Brexit career or pre-Brexit career. He represents some really beautiful and powerful ideas. But it's a bit like sending the worst imaginable salesman out to sell a beautiful product. If John McDonnell had been leader, if he hadn't been here, hadn't had that heart attack, then the whole recent history of British politics may be different. But of course, some people do not learn from their mistakes, and Jeremy Corbyn is in many ways their patron saint. So here we are again. We're watching chaos unfold, which is entirely down to the key characters whose supporters will blame everybody except the key characters and themselves for the chaos that continues to unfold.
Yeah, and it's like you say, in a way it's unfair, isn't it, that millions of people potentially that want to support an alternative to the Labour Party, a more left-wing alternative, are left scratching their heads and putting their heads in their hands, going, where do I go now?
It's arguably bigger than it's ever been. Thank you, Natasha. And listen, in the interest of democracy, let's hope that they all get it sorted out and that these diplomatic efforts are successful. It's 12:43. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where our quest to distill down the meaning of the phrase entrepreneurial flair continues with Robin, who's in Windsor. Robin, what can you tell us?
Hi, James. Nice to speak to you again. I set up in the late 1990s with a couple of mates, set up a company called British Military Fitness, which was an outdoor fitness.
I remember that. In parks and things. Yes.
Yeah. First one ever.
So Hyde Park. Yes, I remember it. Yes, I often saw you from my bench.
Yeah, exactly. We started it, and it was a great idea. Who wouldn't want to be shouted at by a couple of ex-soldiers in Hyde Park? And I was convinced that this would work, and my friends were as well. And we really had to work hard at it. None of us had any entrepreneurial, so none of us had any business experience.
Right.
And we made a lot of mistakes. But eventually, after about 5 years, it turned into a 7-figure income company with across 150 parks in the country with 800 military instructors, all military instructors.
Good Lord.
And about 40,000 people training a week. And,
you must have had some one of you must have had some entrepreneurial flair.
Well, I think yes, I suppose so. I think I stayed the course with it, where the other two guys they sort of dropped out. But I just felt that it was I suppose I used my principles of kind of determination and stuff from the army that this would work. And and of course we as we rolled it out, we found systems that we knew would make it work and people would turn up. But in the early days, we had a really nice chap who was a banker. He worked for Merrill Lynch, and he invested with us.
And so he had entrepreneurial flair, but he didn't do anything except put them...
he had business flair.
Business nous.
He didn't know how to run the classes or anything like that, but he had this sort of idea that, we would have a board meeting, and he would quote Jack Walsh at me, you need to run it by fear, and every year you need to sack, the bottom third, and it's like, yeah, whatever. And so we just rolled.
Just give us the money. Give us the money and clear off.
Yeah, but I think, I was saying to your researcher that, it wasn't the money that motivated me particularly. It was about, seeing this roll out, and be successful and be guaranteed.
We're not going to nail this, are we? Because you're more like Tim. You're more like Mayer's dad. You're like Tim Waterstone. Your love of fitness and his love of books. But obviously, there's another ingredient here, because there are loads of personal trainers out there who didn't end up with a 7-figure business.
No, I know. I think it was, it was just the idea was good. We were the first people, luckily, to get in and do it, I think. Yeah. And the one thing that really motivated me, and I think others, was that it kind of, you saw it change people's lives. It was incredibly social as well, and it became a formula that was very easy to roll out. That was the business side of it. We figured out the formula. And we didn't get any help to do that. We just sort of, it evolved I mean, obviously, all of us were ex-military, so eventually we had to get, financial controllers, marketeers, accountants,
But you did. It's just passion and belief in the product. There's two types, then, isn't there?
And I left it in 2014 because I got bored with it.
Did you cash out?
Yes, but I mean, I kind of it no longer,
and it's still going.
Interesting. Yeah.
Do you do motivational speaking now, Robin?
Sorry?
Do you do motivational speaking?
I don't do anything now. I'm retired now. No.
Because you could do.
I walk dogs. I love walking dogs.
There you go. Go on. I'll tell you what. Turn that into a multi-million-pound business, and I'll give you the money myself.
You see, the thing is, I don't need to now.
I know you don't. Don't stop boasting.
It's nothing to do with the money. Nothing to do with money. It's to do with the fact that for some reason I felt that I had to achieve things and I had to create things throughout my life. And then, at the age of about 55, probably 60-ish or so. Once I did this, I thought, I'm going to go and set up this massive charity in Colombia where I'm going to help people who, from gangs get into, decent hotel work, blah, blah, blah. And I did a bit of that. And then one day I woke up and said, do you know what? You just don't need to do this anymore.
Well, you were fulfilled. You were fulfilled.
Yeah, I was completely at peace with myself.
That's such a lovely place to get to, isn't it? And so few people do. And of course, you would never be Elon Musk if you were fulfilled. You couldn't. You have to wake up every morning thinking that happiness will follow just one more deal or one more twist or one more naught on my fortune. It's a wonderful thing to have enough. And of course, the definition of enough is almost as impossible to pin down as the definition of entrepreneurial flair. But I know what you mean, actually. To be fulfilled, to have the financial security behind you as well is the dream. To think, I don't actually need to do anything else to sustain the lifestyle I'm very, very happy with. And I don't feel I've got nothing left to prove. Or to myself or to anybody else. Guy, you're an inspiration, Robin. Thank you. It's 12:48.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 12:51 and it's pretty hard to pin down, harder than you might imagine. But there is a distinction between people who are very successful in business and love what they do, as in not necessarily the business, but the bit that the business promotes or supports. That, to me, is different from an entrepreneurial flow. Would a true entrepreneur not care what the product was, as long as they had faith in it, but it wasn't their passion in the way that books were Tim Waterstone's passion, or that military fitness was Robin's passion? I just find this absolutely riveting. And I know for a fact that I ain't got it. Whatever it is, I ain't got it. Graham's in Deal. Graham, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello,
love
mate.
the show. Thanks for taking my call.
You're very welcome.
James, I've been classed as a serial entrepreneur all my working days.
Right.
And I've done various businesses over the years, double glazing companies. I worked for a company, set up a double glazing company. But my drive was the money, so that I could go and buy the things that what money could buy.
The toys.
So what I'm trying to say is I worked my way through different businesses looking for the next opportunity to get as much money in my bank as possible.
That's the entrepreneurial spirit. That is it. And it sounds a lot like greed, in a good way.
Yes, it was greed, and I just wanted the best car, the best house. I wanted all that. But my story ends very differently, because then I was in Thailand. I was a hemorrhoid sufferer.
Okay, this has taken a turn. Go on.
It has. So a chap told me all about this new product from America. So I made it my business to get it over here, because I had a very bad operation done on the NHS, and I wanted to get treated. So I signed an NDA, I bought the exclusivity, brought it to the UK, I thought this could be the next big thing. So then I started working with a few people. The Americans messed up with the FDA, so we took over the manufacturing for this. So our company is called Exroid, E-X-R-O-I-D.
Well done.
And Exroid is a non-invasive procedure for hemorrhoids. The point I'm trying to make is the love for money has gone. The need now to help hemorrhoid sufferers way took over the love of money. And I'm still working in the business now. We're a big corporate company. We've got 25 clinics in the UK.
Well, hang on a minute. You've got the best of both worlds here. You've got your missionary zeal in the fighting hemorrhoid front. You're the kind of the Bruce Wayne of hemorrhoids, but at the same time, you're making a ton of cash.
But I've not made a ton of cash out of this business.
Have you
That's
not?
the point I'm trying to make.
Well, when you sell it, you will.
Well, hopefully. I mean, we've got a very small team.
I'm teasing you a bit. So you have discovered a passion for the product that you didn't have with any of the other things that you were very good at selling.
What drives me, James, is seeing the results that we deliver, because this is
Well, you don't see the results.
Well, we do. We get lots of patients doing Trustpilot reviews.
Exactly that. You see the reports of the results, Graham. You don't inspect the actual results.
Well, when they come back for a follow-up treatment, then we can see that the result from the first treatment. I mean, and this is, and I'm just a normal guy, spitting sawdust, mere barrow boy I was called once, but I've got a great team around me with medical staff and what have you.
And it's a horrible condition. There will be people listening who've never heard of you or Xroid and whose life could be about to change. Got a King's Award, I think, for exports.
We got King's Awards, and we're NICE approved, and it's a non-invasive procedure. No anaesthetic is needed. And you can walk in and out, and the same day you can go back to your normal activity.
See, now I'm getting the patter.
Yeah, well, this is true.
I'm getting the patter. Well, this is extraordinary. We've had such a dizzying array of entrepreneurial experiences here, Graham. You could almost say from top to bottom.
From top to bottom, James, yeah. I'll use that one. Yeah, I'll definitely use that one.
There you go. I love it. And that is incredible, because that was it, wasn't it? That moment of realisation. I love being in business, but I'm loving it even more now that the business I'm in is something that I have a personal passion or enthusiasm for. Oh, this is such an interesting conversation. Thank you, Graham. God bless. Andrew's in Cambridge. Andrew, what would you like to say?
Morning, James. I have had my own business since I was 15, so I was the kid at school who was selling games for ZX80s and Spectrums when I should have been doing A-levels. In fact, messed up my A-levels so much I've never even been to pick up the results of the retakes that I did. So, and I've always worked for myself ever since then. But what I wanted to get to is I think Peter Carl might be right, because I worked at IdeaSpace in Cambridge. Now, IdeaSpace is a shared office space that Cambridge have for their students to kind of grow businesses.
Okay.
And I was working in that office with a bunch of PhDs trying to develop businesses, and they don't really get it.
And you think that's a British problem in a way that American students wouldn't have it in quite the same way?
I think it's uniquely Cambridge, because Cambridge has got some super smart people, very smart, but they don't somehow like the kind of the commercial aspect of going off and selling something to people.
And that's what Graham was so good at. That's what Graham sounded so good at, didn't he? And we do have a bit of snobbery as well, because he got called a barrow boy at some point in the past, whereas in America there wouldn't be any negative connotations of being good at what you've just described, going out and selling things. Andrew, I'm sorry, I came to you very late, and I have to play out a little clip of full disclosure this week. There's a few more things I'd like to ask you, and I'm conscious that you had more to say. But Dr. Richard Shepherd is my guest this week, and he is one of the country's, or was one of the country's leading pathologists. You've probably seen him on the telly. He's an absolutely fascinating bloke, and not least because his passion for what he does, post-mortems and solving or helping to solve crimes as a consequence, started so young. This is one of the sometimes I've used the success of full disclosure with famous people to find out a lot more about people who aren't necessarily super famous.
When did you confront your first cadaver? Also, is that the right word to use?
Body, cadaver, autopsy, post-mortem, these words are interchangeable. I mean, we tend to use body.
Okay,
corpse. I mean, but there's all sorts of things that can be used. I would have seen that when I was doing my preclinical year at University College. I would have gone to the post-mortem demonstrations at lunchtime.
And they could sometimes be flamboyant, I think.
Oh, yes, sometimes they could. But at the same time, I was learning anatomy by dissecting a body as well. So we had the two sides working together.
I can't help wondering how ironic it would have been if the very first time that you encountered a body, you actually did find that you didn't have the stomach for it, having been so settled on it for so long, best part of a decade by now.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case, clearly.
There was another moment when I was training as a pathologist, and I was no longer just viewing a post-mortem. I was actually doing it. And that first case that I did myself, that was a huge jump, because there was that realisation that if I can't manage this, I've got some very serious thinking to move around.
What element of it do you mean when you say if I can't manage?
Well, it's actually holding the knife and putting knife to skin and doing that superficially mutilating component of the investigation, because there is that change that you're causing damage. You can justify doing it because there is a beneficial outcome,
of course,
but actually doing that, as a surgeon, you use a knife and you can justify it because you're going to help make someone better. It's a little harder, perhaps. So there was that moment when it was just that little bit harder.
Forensic pathologist was the phrase I was looking for. Dr. Richard Shepherd, one of the most interesting men I've ever met. Absolutely lovely, but also absolutely fascinating. You know the business now. Global Player, LBC app, pause, rewind, live radio, podcasts, free, App Store. Tom Swarbrick, Sheila Fogarty.
James O'Brien on LBC.